We'd like to call the May 8, 2013 meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order. Can we have a roll call?
Jim Sawhill. Jeff Dinwiddie.
Here.
Thomas Piver.
Here.
Steve Pratt.
Here.
Monica Sullivan.
Here.
Monica Everton.
Here.
Jerry Winchester.
Here.
Okay. Do we have any disclosures tonight? Hearing no disclosures, we'll move forward. Sorry, Monica.
I do for case 2013. 2013-052. I just wanted to let everybody know I was approached a few times about this case outside of what we've been given by somebody I work with on a professional basis, called and emailed, and I've asked her to stop, but that was it.
Okay. Commissioner, the other Monica.
For the record, I was recused from cases 2013-003 and 2013-023, and will be abstaining from voting on resolutions 2013-006 and 2013-007.
Which were the two new cases? Which are the two that you're abstaining from? Two resolutions. Oh, I see. Okay. All right.
I will also would like to excuse from Bass Pro. I have a conflict of interest.
Okay. Are there any other disclosures? All right. We'll go ahead and direct. I need a motion to direct Commissioner Monica to be abstained from those cases. Bass Pro Shop. Commissioner Tiber.
Yes, Chairman. I move to compel the Commissioner to participate. I do not intend to support the motion. I believe that's the process. I move to direct to participate, but I do not intend to support the motion.
Thanks, Commissioner Tiber. Commissioner Pratt. Second.
Yes, thank you. Let me just ask Commissioner Sullivan, are you directly working on this particular case, or is your conflict just that you're working for a firm that is representing Bass Pro? Or what? Can you describe the nature of your perceived conflict?
I'm working for the firm that is working in the project. I'm not in the project personal. So I have a conflict of interest because it's in my interest that my company does well with their projects.
So you think that that would prevent you from even participating in an unbiased manner, or there might be that perception, so you're asking to be removed?
Yeah, I'm asking to be removed, please.
Thank you.
The motion to direct the member to participate is on the floor. We'll go ahead and vote on that. That motion fails. Commissioner Sullivan, you are excused from case 2013-033.
Thank you.
Are there any other disclosures? Hearing none. Tonight we are going to withdraw case 2013-050, item F2A on our agenda. The petitioner has withdrawn the case altogether. With that, we're going to move forward with we have one more change in the agenda on public hearings. We're going to, on section G, item number 4 is actually going to move to G2. And I'd like to have a motion to support that agenda change, please. Commissioner Pratt. That motion by Commissioner Pratt, seconded by Commissioner Tybor. Commissioner Pratt, would you speak to that motion?
Yes, I don't have any problem with moving that from number 4 to number 2, and I assume that 2 and 3 then will become 3 and 4.
That's correct. Thank you.
Yes.
Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, please vote. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, that motion passes. All right, now onto the consent agenda. We have resolutions for approval on the consent agenda. If I can get a motion to, does anyone want to pull anything from the consent agenda? Can I get an approval to approve the consent agenda? Commissioner Tybor, Commissioner Tybor.
Yes, Chairman Dinwiddie, I'd like to move to approve the consent agenda resolution for approval for cases 2013-006 and 2013-007.
Thank you. That motion is seconded by Commissioner Emerton. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, that motion passes. Okay, on to our regular agenda items. Case number 2013-052, Anchorage School District. Site plan and landscape review for public facility. Looks like Wonder Park Elementary. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This site is located on the north side of East 4th Avenue at the southern terminus of Davis Street. The site is zoned PLI. It's surrounded by residentially zoned and developed property, primarily with, yes? And it's developed primarily with single-family residential uses. The school district seeks review of proposed improvements for Wonder Parks Elementary School that are primarily include reconfiguring of the existing traffic patterns and replacing the existing asphalt, concrete sidewalks, curbs and gutters, and landscaping will be replaced at the main entry along the south side of the school. Adjacent to the new parent drop-off along the east side of the building and at the new bus stop. Buffer landscaping will be provided between the north parking lot and the south parking lot and the adjacent properties. These improvements do meet several Anchorage 2020 policies. They will provide benefits in terms of safety and accessibility for all students attending the school, and Wonder Park is a community serving school to which the majority of the students do walk, and the school has served the community since 1978. In terms of the standards, the school is served by all public services and utilities. No forms of environmental pollution are anticipated in connection with the proposed parking lot layout, traffic circulation, pedestrian, and accessibility improvements that are planned for the school. Drainage improvements are planned for the north parking area, and the improvements will complement the pedestrian and driveway access improvements that were made with the upgrade of East 4th Avenue. And paving of the temporary bus lane will reduce dust pollution. The safety improvement project for Wonder Park is specifically designed to improve vehicular and pedestrian traffic circulation and safety. The north and south parking lots are being redesigned to separate the parking areas from the queuing lanes and the bus loop for the special needs children. The sidewalks are being reconstructed. Gates and barriers are being installed to prevent unauthorized vehicles from entering the playground areas. Lighting is being provided in the parking areas, and ADA standards will be met for the ramps that will improve accessibility for special needs students. The agency comments, private development did advise the applicant of the need for a drainage analysis. There were comments from Municipal Light and Power. They're pretty substantive. They require the landscaping plan to be amended to relocate plantings away from overhead power lines. If they're near the overhead power lines, they will have to be trimmed every year. And the other point of concern for MLMP is that landscaping should not be planted over high voltage underground lines. With that being said, the department does recommend approval of the amendment of the public facility site plan review for the safety improvements to resolve, subject to resolving drainage and storm runoff with development services, and that's going to be a building permit issue. And the other one addresses Municipal Light and Power. It's to submit amended landscape plan to the Planning Division showing the proposed deciduous and evergreen trees in a location that does not conflict with MLMP overhead power lines and is not over the high voltage underground lines, and that has been stamped approved by Municipal Light and Power. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Hearing no questions, would the petitioner come forward?
Good evening. My name is Mark Kimmer. I'm a landscape architect with Bettisworth North, representing the Anchorage School District for the Wonder Park project. With me, I have Erica Jensen from CRW Engineering, the civil engineer on the project, and Charlie Peters with the Anchorage School District, who's the project manager. And you've had the plans and the staff report. I don't want to take up too much of your time other than being here to answer your questions, clarify any of the design decisions we've made. And as far as a presentation, I would like to jump to the department recommendations to let you know that we, of course, would comply with both, number one, resolve drainage and storm runoff with Development Services Division. We would do that as a part of the building permitting process, and we will comply with that and have no issue with that recommendation. For recommendation number two, submit an amended landscape plan to the Planning Division showing proposed deciduous and evergreen trees in a location that does not conflict with municipal light and power, overhead power lines, and is not over tree plantings over high voltage underground lines, and has been stamped approved by MLNP. After we submitted for the preliminary package that you guys see now, we did get more information from MLNP. It usually happens we have to turn these in so much earlier to get this hearing date set. So we've gone through their requirements, and in anticipation of this meeting, I actually prepared a couple of boards showing an amended landscape plan. I have photos of each of the areas that MLNP has overhead power lines and underground power lines. And I can direct you to those here in a second. what I'm trying to do is show that we're trying to meet these requirements here before you and show you an amended landscape plan. I'm going to start in the southwest corner of the site. And this location is looking west. I believe you have the same material I have, the photos and everything up there. So there's a description from the southwest parking lot looking west. And then there's a picture from East 4th Avenue looking north, and then another smaller picture from the interior of the parking lot. The goal of these photos and the design we've done is essentially to add no additional landscape to that area. The buffer that you see there, the birch trees, the spruce trees, and the shrub plantings in the understory of those provide, we feel, a buffer landscape to the adjacent residential property. In your packet, you can see that we originally had tree plantings in the foreground of this. Well, now that we've looked at MLNP's requirements, we don't really have that space to do it. MLNP doesn't want to take the trees and plants out. They've been topping them. So it's not the best solution for the trees, but they do provide a fantastic existing landscape buffer to the adjacent residences. And in the plan sheet in your packet, I've labeled it L2, sheet L2, you can see that we've basically kept the existing landscape as is, and we've provided lawn in the foreground of it. Now, from the large picture here, you can see in the winter conditions that it provides a significant amount of snow storage, and that's a benefit of leaving the trees and landscape buffer in place as you see them, and keeping a grassed area so we can put snow there and let it infiltrate into the ground. I'm going to move on to the north property line now. And you have pictures of that, I believe, the second sheet of your package, to show you what that looks like. Now, in this area, we have underground power lines. You see them as a dashed line, which I'm afraid doesn't really show up that great. There's two dashed lines coming from west to east through that space. And that goes right through our landscape buffer. We can't plant trees on top of them. So my solution to present to you tonight was to have grass in the foreground off the north part of the parking area, and then have a dense hedge of lilacs, common lilacs at 6 feet on center, to provide what buffer we can with landscape in the space we have, and considering the underground utilities that we can't really avoid. Again, the plan has the solution on there, and I guess it'd be great. I was going to ask if possible, if these are acceptable solutions, and there are no other issues that come up as a part of your discussion, that we may consider final approval for this site and landscape plan this evening, and not resubmit for final. Again, I haven't heard your comments and concerns yet, so I'm prepared to answer your questions now.
Do you have a handout for us?
A handout?
For that, with that plan? Do you have that plan on paper?
I do, yes.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the petitioner? Commissioner Sullivan.
I have a few questions. One is, I'm a little concerned with the raised pedestrian. Right now, the south side of the property by 4th Avenue, we used to have two access to the parking and exit. Now we are adding two for the pickup, and I feel that we are doing kind of a bottleneck where people is crossing. What's your thoughts on that?
As a part of the 4th Avenue reconstruction project, which has been constructed, I'm just flipping to the right page here in my packet. a crosswalk was installed, and I believe you can see it on sheet L2. You see the new parent drop-off directly center on the south side of the school, and between that east or western exit of the parent drop-off and the eastern entrance into this guest and visitor parking area, those lines that go to the south are actually a raised intersection crosswalk. And so as a part of that 4th Avenue reconstruction, that safety was considered. And I may have to ask Erica if that's a signalized crosswalk. No. Okay, so it's a residential, is that a local road? Do you remember? No biggie. But there is a crosswalk there, so it's intended to provide safe, channelized pedestrian circulation to the school.
Do there stop signs there and stop signs?
I don't believe there are on 4th. It is a school zone, so there would be flashers on each end of the school zone.
Okay, this is a question that must be asked. Have you guys, there's a problem in Anchorage with not having neighborhoods with sidewalks. Mm-hmm. Have you guys tried to approach the municipality to try to improve sidewalks around the neighborhood to get a better connectivity to the school?
Actually, what I understand about the site and the neighborhood is that this school is accessed almost primarily by pedestrians, by kids walking and riding bikes. I believe there's only 2 buses that come to the school. 2 to 3, depending on the needs of the children on the bus. So from my perspective, especially with the improvements on 4th Avenue that have been recently constructed, it's a highly pedestrian accessible school now. And I can elaborate on that a little bit. If you look on your sheet L1, it'd be page 38 of your packet. You can see just north of our new bus loop that's on the northwest side of the school, northwest corner of the school. Does everybody have that? There's actually a pedestrian access from the neighborhood to the north. That's what that little easement is that you see in there. There's another pedestrian access directly west of the northern part of the southwest parking lot. There's also another pedestrian connection point from the sports fields, which are on the east side of this school. And so there's another one of those easements that comes through from that part. And then, of course, from the south, kids are just coming to 4th and then making their way to that sidewalk, pedestrian crossing safely. So in that regard, I feel like this is one of the most walkable schools I've ever been involved with or seen.
Okay. And then I have another question. The north side of your property, there was some comments about where the bus drops the kids. It was not working ADA. I see that there's improvements in your sidewalk that comes south to your school.
Yes.
There's some dash lines there of sidewalk that is probably existing. My question is here, that dash lines are direct to the ADA parking stalls.
I do see what you're talking about. Yes, there's 2 sets of lines. There's existing walks and then the proposed ones, and there's a little overlap. Something I should have frozen on my AutoCAD drawing.
Oh, so now if someone comes in and parks in the stalls here of ADA, they need to go around back and then jog back to get in?
I think they would go, and help me out here, Erica, they would go directly south from those ADA stalls in the north parking lot into that crux of the building, and that's where the accessible entrance is for those parking spaces, being that they're...
Will you show me in your,
Yeah.
sorry, in your...
So from these spaces here, they would go directly into an entrance here in the school.
And that existing sidewalk has the ADA?
It does, yes.
Okay.
Regarding accessibility, we've made a lot of improvements. There are some photos of the existing school in your staff packet, and I don't want to take up too much of your time with this, but there are some photos on page 30 and 31 of the school itself. It's kind of an old, like late 60s style architecture to it. And there were many classrooms exited out onto the property, and they used to have landings there. We've actually made all of those accessible now. We worked the grades, Erica did, and we've assured that even though we met code for getting out of the school safely for fires, that kind of thing, we thought it best to make all those entrances and exits accessible. Did I miss anything there, Erica? No. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone? Any other questions? Commissioner Winchester.
Sorry. Follow up on Monica's question. When a student comes out of the front entrance of the school and is going to go west along 4th Avenue without crossing the street, it seems to me that you've got this pickup area or drop-off area with two driveways, and I assume there'll be stop signs at least one of those.
Yes. It'll be a one-way entry from the east side, exiting on the west side.
Okay.
And that will be a stop, and that's, I think, intentional next to that pedestrian crosswalk, so the vehicles have to come to a stop there.
Right. Right. I'm a little bit familiar with this school, and I know that there's a lot of students going that direction. I mean,
I can certainly see your point. There's a couple of options. Students coming out of the main entry and going south would directly connect with that crosswalk, or they could go east on the north side of 4th Avenue, in which case they would have to cross an entry only and exit only for the visitor parking area. They also have
directing the children away around this parking lot. There's another sidewalk. I can see it coming all over.
There is, yes.
It would be beneficial, at least, because to maybe make more use of that sidewalk to get the kids to go around that parking lot going west, and there'll be a lot of kids going west.
That's a good
Maybe they'll
point.
figure it out, but some way of looking at your plan to sort of accentuate that, because it does. You've got that as a lot smaller sidewalk over there.
It actually doesn't penetrate through the fence right now. That sidewalk was intended to let people who park there access the school via sidewalk, but now that you mention it, I think there's a potential for that walk to penetrate through the fence to the north side of 4th Avenue, and they won't have to cross that.
I think that's a great idea. If that's something you could do.
One of the other things is many of the students that do travel west head
excuse me.
directly along that very
Could you
thick.
state your name?
Right.
I'm Erica Jensen, sorry. I'm with CRW, and many of the students from observing on site at multiple pickup and drop-off times is they head directly west onto that dead-end road and avoid 4th Avenue. So that was one reason we made that sidewalk thicker and didn't connect the other ones, as we observed them heading directly through the pedestrian gate.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I can understand that. That probably does work there. I was just thinking of a lot of the kids in the southwest sector headed that direction. And you're right. I can see where a lot of them would connect with that dead end there probably too. So it's a consideration just to look at as a possibility to get the kids around that pickup drop-off area.
Thank you. It's a good suggestion.
Okay. The second one is one of the things that has come about in school projects is the use of conifer trees. And, when they get overgrown, they tend to sort of hide things underneath of them. And I was going to ask you if there was a possibility through this project. I notice a lot of existing conifers there. I'm not saying get rid of them, but what about getting them trimmed up 4 feet so that there aren't going to be the problem of derelicts hiding underneath those trees and sort of a security issue?
My observation of the trees on site, and you can kind of see it in some of the photos in your package, is they actually were up off the ground.
Okay.
All the ones along the buffer, because that's what I was focused on, was can I see through this buffer and what does it look like? So there's some good shots on that southwest corner and the north side where most of the conifers are of that. It's a good suggestion, and I think when we did the landscape plan for the entry of the school, we thought a lot about security and where there are places to hide, that kind of thing. So it's something we're very conscious of.
Okay. It's just something to, because I know the school district doesn't have maintenance money to do those things. So if you're doing a project, it makes it a good time to go in and say, if you limb those things up 4 feet, they stay limbed up 4 feet, for the next 20 years. So those are my 2 comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions, Mark.
Okay.
Okay, so you're cutting a bunch of trees. I'd like to see, particularly the radiant crabs that are in the front of the school, size those up. It'll probably be a requested condition. They're 1.5 inch caliper right now. If you're cutting 17 to 25 trees out of the total landscaping package, then getting some 2-inch specimens, maybe 2.25 inch specimens for the entryway to make a little bit more a presence. And then on the north side, on your revision sheet, there you've gotten rid of a bunch of you have 3 remaining spruce, it looks like, that are in a small group. If those could be 8 foot instead of 6 foot, I think they're spruce trees.
Yes, on the west side here.
That's correct. That 3 group, those would be 8 instead of 6. And then is the 4-inch topsoil and seed in the circle for the bus turnaround? Can you? Is there a reason that there's nothing in there? Is that going to be snow storage? Was that what your thought was?
We did consider it to be snow storage. Also, a little bit of just sight distance as a bus is coming around there, so the bus drivers can see clearly and not have a mass of vegetation as they're coming around the corner.
Is that the same consideration for the drive-through on the other side, the topsoil and seed area there?
On the south side, I believe that's more for infiltration, but I'm sure there would be snow storage there. They've got to clear on that whole east side of the school is paved court area. So that snow's got to come out of there and be pushed to something you don't see in here very well. On the east side of the courts, there's actually a playground there. So it's got playground safety servicing, and then there's a football field. And there's probably a decent photo. Yeah, if you look at page 37 of the site of your package, you'll see the existing conditions that actually show those playground areas and football field.
Okay.
And Erica may be able to help me if we need that for infiltration. I think and snow storage was the key.
How much participation, meeting-wise, with parents and teachers and staff did you guys have? Or usually there's a charrette or...
We do have a summary. I wasn't involved in those meetings very much, so Erica can describe it if she can, how many meetings were had and what the engagement with the public and the teachers and the principal were.
We sent out a couple of newsletters. We also included a bulletin board at the front entryway and positioned it there during parent-teacher conferences to maximize the exposure to as many parents as we could. We had a parent-teacher conference focus group that we had the principal help set up with Chosen and anybody who wanted to participate, and they came in and gave us their ideas. And we also just met with the principal himself. We went to the 2 community council meetings and passed out information there, as well as just presented what we were proposing to do and took comments from those.
Do you feel that any of those comments have made it in the final plan? Is that something, do you feel like that there was adequate public participation in the design of the project?
I do. I feel that the parents and the teachers that we did talk with, in addition to observing the drop-off and the pickup and speaking directly with the people that watch the children, I'm not sure their names, their traffic guards, we were able to incorporate the main routes of both pedestrians and the traffic.
Great. Any other questions of the petitioner? I think we're good.
Thank you.
Staff, do you have any further questions of the petitioner?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Tiber.
Yes, Mr. Chair, you had spoke earlier about a condition that you were in favor of. Could you elaborate on that to the Commission?
The change in the landscape schedule, crab apples would be sized to specimen quality 2-inch caliper. The spruce trees would be 8 foot instead of 6 foot. Those were the two conditions.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion. Thank you, Commissioner Tiber. Can we get a second? Thank you, Commissioner Emerton. Commissioner Tiber.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I move to approve case 2013-052. And I'm sorry, I misplaced the portion of my packet that I was that I wanted to reference. I'm sorry. I move to approve case 2013-052, the site safety improvement project and amended site plan for the site and the landscape plan improvements for Wonder Park Elementary School.
And
subject to, sorry.
And this is the final approval.
The final approval, yeah. Subject to department recommendations 1, 2, and the additional recommendation, and correct my language if I'm misspeaking. 2-inch caliper crabapple trees and 8 foot height on the spruce trees.
Excellent specimen quality. Okay. And Commissioner Tiber, also reference that we have these laid on the table, the new plans. That's part of the final approval we're going to pass tonight. We have before us.
Okay.
The additional plans he submitted.
Yes, and incorporating the additional revised plans.
Thank you, Commissioner Tiber. Commissioner Emerton.
I second the motion to approve the plans supplied this evening for final approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Emerton. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Pratt.
Yes, thanks. I'm a little bit hesitant, I guess, on the final approval. I really don't have any problems with the plans. But I'm wondering, has the public or anybody in the community had any chance to react to final approval? I know that we had a lot of input according to the applicant, and that's fine. But in process, I'm somewhat leery of changing things on the fly at a meeting here. But I just like to hear maybe commissioners' thoughts on final approval and whether we've got all the public input we need and input from anybody who may be relevant.
Well, for someone who's done a bunch of these and had the trees cut down after we put them in, we've planted tons of trees underneath power lines and not adjusted the plans and and later have MLP or TruGAC or a contractor theirs cut them down. I think that's a pretty standard. I mean, it's better practice to move them now and amend the site. I think as long as the intent of Title 21 is met on the landscaping plan and I think we address that by giving larger trees. As long as that intent of that landscaping plan is met, I think that we've done our job here, but I'd be open to suggestions too or any more further discussion. Commissioner Tiber, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I tend to support the motion. The project is in compliance with the Anchorage 2020 Anchorage Bowl Comprehensive Plan and specifically supports policies 42, 44, 45, and 54. Subject to the conditions being met, I tend to support the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Tiber. Commissioner Edmonton?
I agree. I intend to support the motion. I feel it's met the Anchorage 2020 standards.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Is there any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, that motion passes. We're about to move into the public hearings. At the UDC, the procedure by which the public may speak to the Urban Design Commission at its meeting is 1, after staff presentation is completed on public items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the Urban Design Commission rules of procedure. Petitioners, including his or her representatives, have 10 minutes. Rebuttal by the petitioner may be allowed when time is reserved. Reservations or groups, community council, PTAs have 5 minutes. Individuals have 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the commission. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the commission. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Urban Design Commission takes. Appeals must be filed with the clerk's office within 20 days after the Urban Design Commission's final decision. Any individual may request final written findings on any commission decision within 7 days. Before us, we have case 2013-033, Bass Pro Shop sign variance for a large commercial retail establishment. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Mr. Chair. For this case, public notification, 29 public hearing notices were mailed. There have been no comments returned either in support or in opposition to the sign variance request. There were 3 notices that were returned unclaimed. As you mentioned, this is a request for a sign variance from Schedule 2147-060A, Figure 8, to exceed the allowable sign square footage on the south elevation of the proposed Bass Pro Shop store that is to be located in the Glen Square Mall. Bass Pro Shops proposes to open a store in a commercial structure located in the Glen Square Shopping Center. The store is going to be located in the southwest corner of the Glen Square Shopping Center near the intersection of Mountain View Drive and the Glen Highway. In preparation for this particular development, the Bass Pro Shops, they have amended their original sign plan to comply with the sign code for 3 of the 4 building elevations, but is requesting a sign variance to exceed the allowable sign square footage for the south elevation of the Bass Pro Shop. The south elevation is a secondary frontage The allowable signage is 380.2 square feet. The request is for 610.81 square foot for a total of 4 signs that exceeds the allowable square footage by 230.6 square feet. In reviewing the standards for a sign variance, it appears that all the standards have been met. Special conditions were found to exist. The Bass Pro Shop store is 20 feet below the elevation of the Mountain View Drive. It is below. There's a sharp drop in elevation that is protected by a slope easement, and it is behind the stores and below the stores that have frontage onto Mountain View Drive. There is very little visibility of this store and its signage from Mountain View Drive. There is also wetlands adjoining the southern boundary of this particular lot within the Glen Square. Now, this has wetlands. They're type C. However, they perform a critical hydrologic function for this particular shopping center, for Clark Junior High School, as well as for the Mountain View community. They are protected by plat notes, and they are under the jurisdiction of the Army Corps of Engineers. So there's limited visibility from Mountain View at that intersection as well. Strict application of the sign ordinance would deprive the petition of rights that are commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district. And that's due to the drop in elevation and the limited visibility from Mountain View Drive, and as well as the location being the wetland tract, which is undisturbed and does have significant vegetative growth that limits visibility from the south as well. Of course, these characteristics do not result from any actions by the petitioner himself or by the corporation. The design of the store is intended to reflect the Alaskan environment. The applicant's representative probably can expand on how they have worked with the Alaska Heritage Center to create the facade for this particular store. Granting the variance will be in harmony with the surrounding area and in conformance with the standards and criteria established in the sign code. Granting the variance will not impair the integrity of the or the character or the utility or the value of the neighboring properties, and it will not permit a use that is not otherwise permitted in the zoning district. The signage that is proposed for this store is uniform on all elevations of the building and will not materially add to the visual clutter or blight. After modification of the sign plan that included elimination of some proposed sign, the requested variance is the minimum necessary to adequately advertise the variety of products and services offered by the Bass Pro Shops. The intent of the sign code is to offer equal opportunity to businesses to advertise all of the services, the products that they are selling, and clearly this particular store in this particular location in the Glen Square Mall does not have an equal opportunity. The only elevation that does have any significant visibility is the south elevation, and it fronts onto the Glen Highway, which is a high-speed road, so people driving very fast have limited time to actually notice or read a sign. And so this south elevation is very critical to the Bass Pro Shops store to gain attention and call attention to their location and what they offer inside their store. So the department does recommend approval of the request for the variance from Schedule 2147-060A, subject to 2 conditions that are recommended on page 8 of the packet. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions to staff? Thank you. Will the petitioner come forward? You know the drill. We have a short board again. And you know you've already been offered postponement once. And you know that the rules for the short board, are you willing to continue or would you like a postponement? You have 30 days on the next calendar. If you can choose to continue, do you understand?
I choose to continue, and I do understand, and it's great to see you all here on this sunny night.
Okay.
My name is Wendy Wilbur. I'm with CRW Engineering, and I am representing Bass Pro tonight on the sign variance. Ms. O'Brien, I think, did an excellent job summarizing all the facts, and I would just like to point out a few other items. If I had $1 for every time somebody asked me where Glen Square is, I would be a rich woman now. It's very exciting that Bass Pro is coming to Anchorage, but Glen Square opened in 2007 and currently has a 50% vacancy rate. Bass Pro is going to be repurposing 3 existing buildings and actually developing one of the site pads that was never developed. And so it's a very exciting opportunity to see this revitalization of the Mountain View neighborhood that was originally intended to start in 2007, start in 2013. And as I was doing research for this project, I saw in the Anchorage Daily News in January 2011 is why are the stores still empty? So we have a client who is coming in and exceeding Title 21 in all aspects in terms of really just a over-the-top commercial building from what Anchorage is used to seeing. Bass Pro is known for their facilities and for designing something that fits in with the local communities. And as Ms. O'Brien mentioned, they are working with the Native Heritage Center to make sure that it is culturally appropriate and that it blends in. And to that end, most of the elevations, the signage is less than allowable by Title 21. They're not just putting signs up for the sake of putting signs up, but it really is not a visible site and access is difficult. And even from the Glen Highway, you can really only see the buildings or the new Bass Pro Shop if you're heading into town, kind of that southwest view. So they've really chosen the minimal signage to enhance their visibility somewhat, yet still keep in with the scale and architecture of the building. So we would just ask that you approve this tonight. Thank you.
Are there any questions of the petitioner? We'll reserve questions after the public testimony.
Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to open the public hearing. Does everyone wish to speak? Hearing and seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing, but we'd like the petitioner to come forward. Are there any questions of the petitioner right now? I have a question. So the only sign that you need a variance on is the big tower that's closest to the highway, correct?
Correct. That tower is actually there with, I believe there are Old Navy signs on it now. So there's a sign on each side of the tower, and then there are also 2 additional signs. There's an additional tower more towards the front of the store, and so there's a White River and a Redhead sign, and those are actually little sub-stores within Bass Pro. And so it's important that they're advertised as well. So the sign variance actually includes 4 signs, not just one enormous sign, but 4 smaller signs.
How much taller is the tower than the existing sign now? The proposed sign versus, because the variance is for height, I believe, on the sign that's on the east elevation.
No, the variance is just for allowable square footage.
Okay.
Because none of our signs exceed the roof line.
Okay. That's what I didn't understand. Okay. All right, I have no further questions. Anyone else? Commissioner Winchester.
So you are constructing one new tower, is that correct?
Correct.
So the existing tower is on the southwest corner,
Correct.
and that's the one that will have 2 Bass Pro signs on it?
2 Bass Pros, and it is angled.
Right.
So
Right. And then you're asking for the additional 2 signs on the new large tower?
correct.
Okay. Okay. And that tower basically doesn't exceed the roof line, huh? Okay. That's a major tower.
But it breaks up those building lines and gives you architectural interest.
Yes, yeah. And so this is supposedly, or the idea of this is to enhance the visibility from people traveling north on the Glen. Is that correct? Because
It's
people coming south on the Glen, I mean, when I look at these elevations, they're not going to miss it. I mean, the outpost.
right. When you're
Because the
when you're
buildings-
traveling south, you can see the front of the building. It's right there. So it is. It's just It's just enhancing that visibility if you're going north and flying over, frankly. Merrill Field has a flight path right over this, and it does help with airplanes coming in, and that was part of their thought. Because a roof sign wasn't allowed.
Well, as a pilot that flies in and out of Merrill a lot, most of the people will be flying and landing to the west. So they'll pretty much see that outpost and tracker boat signs. You don't actually land going that way, but that's just the way the runways are. Okay, I think that's all I had, was just to clarify that where the signs were. Thank you.
I don't think we have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for the record, you have a rebuttal, but will you let us know you don't want a rebuttal? All right. Can we entertain a motion? Oh, I did close the public hearing. So, entertain a motion? We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Monica Emerton. Can I get a second? Commissioner Tiber, thank you. Commissioner Emerton.
I move to approve case 2013-033 based on staff's recommendations, 1 and 2.
Thank you. Commissioner Tiber.
Yeah, I have seconded the motion. I intend to support it as well.
Is there any discussion? Possibly some findings? Commissioner Emerton.
I intend to support the motion based on the findings stated by staff that they are at a disadvantage given the grade to the site. It's hard to see from the roads because they are, I think, a 20-foot disadvantage to the road.
Six standards. We need to meet 6 standards.
Yeah, I know. So just read through the
Yes,
findings?
please do.
Okay, I will read through the findings.
Yeah. Just breeze through.
So condition 1, the special conditions to the land involved was the 20 feet below grade is met. Condition 2 is the strict application of provisions by the sign ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly involved. This one is substantially met because it provides an effective means of wayfinding in the community. Finding 3, special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant, and this is substantially met. The petitioner did not create the grade and everything else going on the site. Finding number 4, or condition number 4, granting the variance would be in harmony with the objectives of the sign ordinance. It would not impair the integrity, character, utility, and value of the neighborhood, or otherwise be detrimental to public welfare. This is substantially met. This is occupied already with the own logos and signage. It doesn't really change. It's actually going to allow the site to be fully occupied. Condition number 5, granting the variance will not materially add to visual clutter or visual blight. This standard is substantially met. It's uniform to all elevations of the building. It is not going to create visual clutter. It's actually going to enhance the building facade. And finding number 6, the variance, if granted, is the minimum variance that will make possible reasonable economic use of land or structure, and this is substantially met. They're actually not exceeding on most of their signage. They're only needing it for the 4 signs that they're applying for.
Thank you. Commissioner Tiber, would you just like to speak to your second?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I intend to support the motion. I believe it has met all 6 required standards to approve a variance.
Thank you, Commissioner Tiber. Is there any other further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, is there any opposition? Hearing none, that motion passes. We're going to take a quick minute recess to get Monica back in here, and then we'll resume our meeting. Okay, moving forward. Our next case is case 2013-062, Municipal Public Works Capital Project. Let's see what we got here. Site plan for a public facility. It is for McCleahy Pike. Do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of this project is to replace the concession and changing facility at the Anchorage Football Stadium. The replacement building is 2,474 square feet, 400 square feet smaller than the existing building, and it will include player and official locker room facilities, concession facilities, a ticket office, and a first aid facilities. The site is located on the northeast corner of the Anchorage Football Stadium, east of A Street and south of East 16th Avenue. The proposed project is consistent with the goals and policies of Anchorage 2020. The 82 land use plan map identifies the site as park and open space, and the site is consistent with the goals of the comp plan, specifically avoiding incompatible uses and designing and building public improvements for long-term use. The project meets all of the requirements in the PLI zoning district and all applicable supplementary district standards. The project will not have a negative permanent impact on pedestrian or vehicle circulation, the demand or availability of public services, or environmental pollution, and it will maintain compatible and efficient development patterns. The proposed project is consistent with the standards for a public facility project landscape review, and the department recommends approval of the final site plan and the final landscape plan, subject to conditions 1 through 3 on page 5 of the staff report. One of the conditions requires that the 4 benches that are currently at the site be replaced, or I believe they will reuse those benches and locate them back on the site plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Commissioner Pratt.
One question. There was a comment from the traffic engineering about the, I guess at the Chester Creek Sports Complex, I guess there's some kind of review of the traffic circulation. How does that really relate to what we're talking about here? Because as I understood it, this is just a replacement building. It's smaller. It wouldn't change the ingress or egress or anything else. And can you just tell me what their point was?
Certainly, through the chair. I believe there's also another project that's in design phase that's looking at the parking lot and traffic circulation of this complex, but that's a separate project. I don't think this has any impact on that.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions of staff? Hearing none, will the petitioner come forward?
Good evening. My name is Heath Landon. I'm a project manager with the Municipality and Capital Projects Division. The project is located at the Anchorage Football Stadium. As staff stated, the building is approximately 2,400 square feet and about 400 feet smaller than the existing building. The existing building is approximately, I believe, almost 30 years old and is not usable, as my understanding, due to substantial shifting and settling in the walls and slab, causing unsafe conditions. So it's my understanding through the last several seasons that building hasn't been utilized. They've actually had temporary facilities and that type of thing on site. The new building, we believe, the layout and design maximizes efficiencies for both the operators and the public who would be utilizing the facility. We have been in communication with staff and have reviewed their comments and recommendations, and we're in full agreement and do not have any issues with the acceptance of the staff recommendations as conditions to the approval by the Commission. I appreciate your time, and I'll do my best to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions of the petitioner? Commissioner Sullivan.
Hi.
Hi there.
First, it's a great project, very organized, simple, clean. I really appreciate that you're making a better Anchorage. I have just one question. I drive my bike every day through there, and I know that there's a lot of homeless in that area. Did there's any thoughts for like motion detectors or?
We actually we've designed it so that we, on all elevations, have the LED lights so that it's very lit, so it's not as dark and kind of, we've also relayed out the fences and that type of thing in that area, so you can still use it as traffic flow, but the fence currently allows you to access down in, because the elevation changes from the parking that's just to the east of the facility. And the new fencing would not allow you to access that kind of darker, lower area as much. So I think it would help with that situation, with the lighting and the fencing.
Did there's any thoughts about vandalize of the nice new building?
We did look at that, and we've tried to look at the finishes that are very durable, and that's one of the reasons as well that we've added substantial lighting on this building, is to make it brighter so that it would, it can't as easily be accessed without someone noticing. And then the finishes are metal, like a pre-finished metal, and tiles, so we've tried to make them very durable finish. And then internally, same thing, we've looked at trying to make the finishes and the particular types of finishes inside as durable and user-friendly, but still hold up to very heavy use.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
If Mulcahy gets moved to the west, does that affect this at all?
It is my understanding that this doesn't affect that project at all. I think that it's just to the north of this whole area is what would be affected, and then to the west. So it's my understanding this would have nothing to do with that project.
Okay. Are there any further questions of the petitioner? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
At this time, we'd like to open the public hearing for case number 2013-062. If anyone would like to come forward? Anyone? Hearing none, seeing none, the public hearing is closed. And would you like to rebuttal? There's no further questions. I will entertain a motion. Commissioner Sullivan.
I move to approve case 2013-062. It's a very simple, well-thought project, and it will be well used.
Thank you.
Subject to conditions.
I think it's just two, right?
God, I lost my conditions here. There were 3 conditions. Number 1. This, okay. Number 1, number 2, and number 3.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. Commissioner Emerton.
I second the motion to approve the design based on staff's conditions.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? No discussion? Is there any opposition? Oh. Commissioner Sullivan, will you speak to your findings, please? So we need some findings.
Well, I just think that it's a great project, and it's replacing a smaller footprint. They are incorporating landscape. They have thought about vandalize, and they have thought about security. It's a place that it needs help, and there's a lot of use from the public in the area.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan, I intend to support the motion as well. I believe it's consistent with the goals and policies of Land Comprehensive Plan, the 1982 Land Use Map Plan. It avoids any adjoining conflicts. It meets criteria for approved establishments under the title. It won't have any negative impact on the items listed in the subsection substantially greater than anticipated permitted development, and the proposed project is consistent with standards for public facility with project landscaping review as stated in AMC 2115-025. And I intend to support the motion. With that, is there any opposition? Hearing none, that motion passes. Our next case before us, we'll let the clerk catch up. We're going to do this one. Yes. All right, case 2013-048, Anchorage School District ASD Facilities. We have, looks like Service Handshoe High School. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The Anchorage School District seeks project review for the addition of sports fields and bleachers and related amenities for Service High School to allow the school to host athletic events on site. The improvements are concentrated in the multi-use, which is the soccer, football, and track stadium, and needed modifications to the associated circulation. The major elements that for the proposed improvements include grandstands, seating for approximately 2,500 spectators. Of that amount, the grandstands will seat approximately 1,500 spectators for the home team and 1,000 spectators for the visiting team. There will be an 8 by 30 foot press box. Also, sports field lighting, new post-mounted sports field lighting will be provided on both sides of the field to replace the existing lighting. The lighting will be provided on 4 or 6 stanchions depending on final engineering. The lighting will be constructed to maintain uniform lighting on the field while eliminating light trespass in accordance with municipal requirements. And there will be a public address system. A public address system for the home and visitor grandstands is a program for inclusion in the improvements. Service High School borders Far North Bicentennial Park on the north and east sides. The nearest home to the school is 750 feet to the west, and the nearest home on the south side is 1,230 feet away. The planned installation of stadium lights and the scoreboard should not affect the residents to the west, given the distance to the nearest home. Likewise, the speaker paging system may also not affect the residents living quite some distance away, as it's being integrated into the grandstands to minimize the sound levels, and is being specifically designed to use more and smaller speakers to diffuse the sound, to limit the impact on adjacent residences. Although the sound from the cheering crowds may be audible. The existing parking lots have more than sufficient parking spaces to accommodate the number of anticipated spectators. Seating for 2,500 spectators requires, under municipal code, parking spaces for approximately 450 vehicles. The school parking lots can accommodate 645 vehicles. Due to the tight space constraints at the existing field, there is the home grandstand will need to be placed on the south side of the field, where there is currently an existing drive. So therefore, putting the grandstand there, they'll have to reconfigure the circulation, which is described on the submittal. Fire trucks will still be able to access all sides of the school, and school buses and emergency vehicles have not been hindered. The division has the recommendations as shown on pages 5 and 6 of the staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Commissioner Pratt.
Is the division recommending approval?
This is just the first review, this concept review, so the project will be returning for final approval.
And this, is the actual name of the site Service Handshoe?
Most likely.
Okay, thanks. I didn't know that.
Any other questions of staff? Hearing none, will the petitioner come forward?
Thank you, Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Dwayne Adams with USKH. That's DWAYNE Adams, representing the Anchorage School District in this case. With me tonight, I also have John Gaskins, who will also speak shortly. Staff did an excellent presentation, I think, of the project, and I really don't have much to add, actually, to the specific facilities that were detailed in the presentation. I think she captured that quite well. She also captured, I think, the nature of the neighborhood. Respecting that, we do have approval of both community councils and enthusiastic approval of the one in which we lie, the Abbott Loop Community Council. We also are coordinating with the Nordic Skiing Association. They're probably the one group most affected by the proposed project, having a trail that is just north of the visitor grandstands that are on the site plan that you have before you and shown in the image to my left. With that, what I would like to do is give a few minutes to Mr. Gaskins just to address what this means to the school and what they're trying to achieve.
Hi, I'm John Gaskins. I'm the principal at Service High School. Having a stadium seating for our kids, and now I have 1,800 of them, is really something that's going to improve our academics. The reason I say that is one of our, the strategic plan for ASD is Destination 2020, which is 90% graduation rate, 90% attendance. And as much as I want to say that kids come to take AP Calc and AP Physics, a lot of our kids come because of sports. This stadium seating would help those kids have a tie to our school, tie to a sport. Many a time I can remember hauling my lawn chair to watch four of my 5 boys play sports. And right now our parents and family members are sitting on the ground, or they are sitting on a small hill. I'd like the seating there for them. We really have no place for an outside assembly area for our kids. This would be a perfect place. We have a beautiful new turf that's safe for the kids to play on. We have a gorgeous new 8-lane track for them for track and field, and for the community itself. It's open to the public. This is something that we've been working on for a long time, and I want our kids to be more tied to our school. I want them in school because, believe it or not, being tied to a sport, activities for kids is very important. And because they have to come to school to become eligible to play those sports, they attend. Any questions? Is that what? Okay, we'll get to that. All right.
I think Mr. Principal Gaskins pretty much captured the essence of what we're trying to do here. I sit on a committee at Anchorage Economic Development Council, and as part of that, we're doing live, work, play. Some of you may have heard of that, and there's a number of efforts that strive to achieve a number of things, and they try to achieve better jobs. They try to achieve better living conditions. We're trying to achieve better recreation facilities and cultural facilities. And in an analysis that was done, there's one thing that pops up that's absolutely critical to all the different areas that we're trying to achieve under live, work, play. And that single one thing, that single common thing that cities that are successful in achieving this have is simply high graduation rates. Capturing those marginal students is much more important than it seems at face value. So I do think for all these projects that you have seen and will see, that's key to this. Now, with respect to staff conditions, there is one issue that I would like to address, and that's on page number 6, condition number 4. This is something that was requested by Ms. Skanke, the Trails Coordinator. And I do understand what Ms. Skanke is trying to achieve. She would like connectivity of the walkway system to this new stadium. I'll hold this up so that I can speak and show you what I'm speaking of. This trail, as you can see, is the Abbott Road Trail. It then comes along here. It makes a big arc around the water tank that's here. And then it comes up here, and then it crosses a driveway that provides access to the water tank. It also provides access to the adjacent elementary school. And what Ms. Skanke is trying to provide is connectivity of this trail to that entrance, which will be up here in the top right-hand corner, and the solution is then to provide something back here behind the swimming pool. The reality is that this is akin to people parking at the Sullivan Arena and suggesting that what they need to do is to walk up to 16th Avenue for access to the Sullivan Arena. That's just not the way people travel. The reality is, during an event, the people are going to be parking within this large parking lot. When they park within the large parking lot, they're going to walk the most direct route. People who are walking up this trail are simply not going to do that. They are not going to move north to move east. We don't think it achieves what we're looking for. Further, it provides a pedestrian path in an area that's unsupervised. As you can see in the drawing, it lies in the shade. You're unable to see what's going on back there. We don't want to encourage connectivity between an elementary school and a high school. And while well-intentioned, we suggest that it may be ill-advised and ask that the requirement for that connection as well as the construction be removed as a condition of approval. However, we are in favor of and approve of the other 3 conditions. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioner Sullivan.
I just looking at the exhibit D. So you're assuming that most of the people is going to park in the east parking lot because it's the biggest one. But I'm just looking at the west parking lot. It's a lot closer in a lot of ways to the new stadium. We are providing walking paths from the east parking lot to the stadium. but there's no any connection from the west parking into the stadium. Do there's any thoughts on that?
When I assume, through the chair, Commissioner Sullivan, when you say the west parking lot, you're talking about that parking south of the swimming pool?
Yeah.
Just for clarification.
Right in the other side. Next to the
Oh.
hockey rink.
Oh, that would be the east parking lot. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry.
This parking lot right here for clarification.
Yeah.
Yes, during, they would walk, basically what they do now, they would walk up the roadway, which is what happens to ski events. People walk up the roadway, people will walk up that roadway. Also what happens, it's not apparent, actually what will mostly happen, let me look and see if it's shown. It's hard to tell this, but if you look, see the rotunda that is in the center of the school, the large rotunda, that's, I believe, where the library is. What happens, that is a passageway through, and those dotted arrows, you can walk underneath that whole area. And actually, my daughter went to this school for a couple years, and that's the way people move, actually, from that parking lot to get through that area. They'll walk under those raised passageways and access the area called bus park staging area, which is where the entrance is.
That's it, I think. That's great.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pratt.
Yeah, thanks. On condition number 4, Ms. Ferguson talked about the future east-west pedestrian path. Do you anticipate that path will be in there at some time, or?
In all honesty, seriously doubtful. It's not desirable. It was desired by Ms. Skanke. Staff respectfully included that. We don't see that it adds value. We don't see that it adds, it serves a purpose that's trying to be, and we understand the well-intentioned purpose, but we don't see that it'll ever be constructed because it's undesirable. It's in an area that can't be supervised. Schools trying to get rid of places that entice students to areas like that. So it's really counterproductive to larger goals, I think.
Thank you.
Commissioner Winchester.
Thank you, Dwayne. Question, so just to clarify, this pedestrian walkway that's being requested goes behind the swimming pool to the north of the swimming pool, east and west, from the trailside bus circulation between the swimming pool and the tennis courts, and goes over to what would be the main sort of thoroughfare going towards the, is that correct? That's what's being requested?
Through the chair, Commissioner Winchester, if you'll refer to page 14 of the staff packet, you'll see what's being proposed by Ms. Skanke, and that's exactly what it does.
Oh, I see. Thank you very much. I missed that. So this path then is to serve people coming from this footpath, but the people coming from the footpath would be coming from the southwest corner, as you suggested, and there's a wide open parking lot all the way to the main entrance. It doesn't
Correct.
seem that what you're saying is they wouldn't go north and then decide to turn right and go behind this building to get to the entrance. They just go straight across the parking lot.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just to clarify.
Thank you, Commissioner Winchester. Any other questions? Hearing none, I think we're good. At this time, we'd like to open a public hearing for case number 2013 48. Yeah, I was right. 48. Anyone like to come forward and speak? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Would you like a rebuttal, Mr. Adams?
I agree with everything that's been presented here.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
All right, can we entertain a motion for approval of the review? Keep in mind this is coming back. Commissioner Emerton. And with a second by Commissioner Pratt and support by Mr. Winchester.
I move to approve the initial site plan review for case 2013-048 based on staff's recommendations 1 through 3.
Thank you. Commissioner Pratt.
Yeah, I agree. This seems to be a very good project, good for the community. I'm fully in support of it, and I also support approval with recommendations 1, 2, and 3.
Commissioner Pratt, can you speak to why we're not including in condition 4, staff condition 4?
Condition 4, it was proposed by the non-motorized transportation coordinator, and apparently, in her view, it would be a good idea to have a dedicated path between the I don't know how I can describe this, to the west end of the west parking lot behind the pool, to the east side of the west end of the west parking lot, and then connecting over to the east parking lot and then to the facility that we're talking about. The professional testimony that we have suggests that that construction of that particular facility, it's not part of standard design criteria right now. Recommended that not be put in place, and there's also some suggestion that it probably wouldn't be used because of the alternative pathways that people will use just normally in terms of trying to get from one place to the next place using the most direct route. So I don't believe that condition is necessary.
Thank you, Commissioner Pratt. Commissioner Emerton, would you like to speak to your motion?
I would. I believe that this initial site plan furthers the goals and policies of the Comprehensive Development Plan and conforms to the Comprehensive Development Plan in the manner required by Chapter 21.05. Policy number 44, design and build improvements for long-term use that will benefit students, staff, family members, and the community. Policy 78, design municipal facilities frequented by the public, particularly schools, to accommodate year-round. The sports field improvements will allow spectators to comfortably use the facility. And policy number 86, it will encourage public and private collaboration for acquisition, development, and maintenance of recreational spaces, parks, sports fields, public use facilities, and trails. And the proposed improvements represent a collaborative effort between parents, the Cougar Booster Club, and others. It will also be compatible with the planned land uses surrounding the neighborhood with the intent of its use district.
Great, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Is there any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, that motion is approved. Okay, before we start our last case, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Yeah, I think it could be a drink water. Does that Thank you. Please have your seat. We are now back in session. The May 8th meeting of the Urban Design Commission. Our next case is going to be case number 2013-049, Anchorage School District, request for amendment to site plan review for West High Romig Middle School. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This is Romig, West High Romig property. It fronts onto Hillcrest Drive to the north and Minnesota Drive to the east. The property abuts residential property to the west and predominantly commercial property to the south. The new stadium improvements are situated to the west of Romig Middle School and south of the West Anchorage High School. The school site is zoned PLI. R1A zone property to the west is developed with single-family residential uses. RO and B3 property to the south is commercially developed, and Westchester Lagoon to the north is zoned PLI. The stadium improvements are similar to those proposed for Bartlett that was heard last month and for Service High that you heard just previously. This is an amendment to an approved site plan of the West Romig sports venue, and the ASD seeks approval for the addition of bleachers, a scoreboard, lighting, a public address system, and related amenities that would be used for hosting athletic events at the school. Currently, there are no spectator amenities, and the natural turf is in poor condition. The proposed modifications include grandstand seating for approximately 2,500 spectators, a press box, a chain-link security fence, electronic scoreboard, 6 8-foot tall light poles, and a public address system, and 2 new artificial turf multiple-use fields, a 10-lane track, storage building, and not included in the project, but in the future, there will be 2 new tennis courts as well. The proposed improvements do meet several Anchorage 2020 policy statements listed on pages 3 and 4 of the packet. Those are basically numbers 44, 45, policy number 78, 86, and 89. The improvements are planned for long-term use that will serve both the school and the community for sporting and other special events throughout the year. West High has been an integral part of the community since 1963. The new stadium will allow games to be held at the school for the first time since the school was built in 1960, at least since 1963. The improvements to the sport fields will allow year-round use on a year-round basis, and the school district has worked in collaboration with parents groups to develop the proposed improvements shown on the amended site plan. Expansion of the sports facilities will provide opportunities to host new and different types of sporting events throughout the year. In terms of compatibility, this site is zoned PLI. Schools are a permitted use in the PLI district. Sports facilities are a permitted accessory use and a typical amenity in an educational setting. Schools are compatible with residential neighborhoods and considered an asset for the public functions such as voting, meetings, and cultural events as well. In terms of the standards for this proposed amendment, the school is located in an urban area and is served by all public services and utilities. The one area that has generated and will possibly generate concern on the part of adjacent residential residences is noise from crowds and the public address system, as well as lighting from the fields may cause concern because it will be a new element being introduced into the neighborhood. However, the height of the lighting poles is an integral part of the lighting in that it focuses the light on the field, but it does reduce glare and avoids trespass onto adjacent properties. The foot candle is 30 foot candle on the field, and it is reduced to about 1 foot candle at the edge of the track. And Romig Field next to the new track will not be lighted, so lighting trespass should not occur beyond the school property. Also, the scoreboard will be illuminated, but it will be located at the south end of the field and will be oriented to the north and will not face the residential neighborhood to the west. As mentioned in the prior case, the public address system will use a number of smaller speakers focused on the bleacher seating rather than a few large speakers in order to diffuse the volume of the noise. The application has stated that the school will monitor the system at school boundaries and modify the volume as necessary to ensure that the system does function as designed. There will be noise from the grandstands, that's true. The home games grandstands face to the east, away from the residential neighborhoods, hopefully deflecting a lot of the noise from the crowds. And the home crowds probably would be the most excited and generate the most noise at games. And hopefully that will reduce noise impact on the neighbors to the west. The grandstands are approximately 300 feet away from the residential neighborhood. There will only be about 5 or 6 events per year as well, and most games will start before 6:30 p.m. And the lighting is very limited in terms of the season in which the in which the games are played. In terms of vehicular circulation, there are 800 parking spaces, which should be sufficient to accommodate major events at the school. The Exhibit C does show a 24-foot school bus access drive entering from and extending along the south property boundary to the parking lot for Romig Middle School. And this access does cross property for which there is not a dedicated right-of-way or access easement. So legal access across that property for school buses will need to be provided if and when that access is constructed. The agency comments basically dealt with the need for a drainage analysis that will be part of the building permit process. Watershed Management Services has asked for stormwater pollution prevention plan to be submitted for review and approval. That will be part of the building permit process. Traffic Engineering did comment that they want verification of the illumination plans for the sports field lighting and scoreboard, and they want them to be verified, as well as to provide adequate vehicle access, maneuvering, and turning at the stadium entry to allow for servicing of the portable restrooms. However, they did not require a TIA or a traffic study to be done for this proposed development. Therefore, as a footnote to this, the department does recommend approval of the proposed amendment to the plan, subject to staff provided 9 conditions on pages 7 and 8 of the packet. Condition 8 can be deleted. Number 7 needs to be amended to say prior to construction of the driveway, provide a driveway permit for the proposed 24-foot school bus access drive that crosses tracks 1A and 2A Mont Haven subdivision, and provide proof that legal access has been obtained for the proposed access drive. And as a footnote to the conditions, the school district has been working very closely with the neighbors. They have tried to resolve the concerns, working in conjunction with the school district's representative and the neighbors. There were concerns that were received yesterday from Kathy Gleason, who is president of the Turnagain Community Council. and they were emailed to you as soon as we got them. And since that time, there has been cooperation with the community and the school district to try to resolve some of those concerns. There was a meeting that was held on April 22nd, and trying to work out and resolve some of those concerns. And the applicant has provided an amendment to the conditions of approval. They were laid on the table tonight, and they're adding 7 additional conditions that are in response to concerns that were outlined in that email that you received yesterday. And so they are, the following conditions were added, number 10 through 16. With a deletion of number 8, there would be 15 conditions of approval in total. And so the conditions 1 through 7 as amended, delete 8, and condition 9, and then conditions 10 through 11 on the handout that was laid on the table tonight would are recommended to be part of the approval for this case. Thank you.
Commissioner Pratt.
Yes, thank you. The proposed modifications were proposed by the applicant?
Through the chair, Mr. Pratt, the proposed modifications are basically the result of a joint effort of the community. My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong.
But these aren't staff recommendations.
10 through 16 are not. They're in response to those concerns that were raised in that email. But staff does not disagree with them. But when I received the comments yesterday, I had no idea which ones were agreeable to the school district, considering their concerns for security, and which ones they would be agreeable to. And
Okay.
so
I just want that's fine. I'll just ask the applicant to make sure that this. Thank you.
Any further questions of staff? Commissioner Sullivan.
Okay, page 6, it mentions that there were some comments from the traffic engineer that traffic impact analysis study is not required. What was that comments that he had on that for not having the traffic impact analysis?
Pardon? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Sullivan, I don't understand.
Okay. Here it says that there were some comments from the traffic engineer, and they were that it was not require a traffic impact analysis or a traffic study for the project. What were that comments, and why is that it's not required to have a traffic study in the project?
Through the chair, Ms. Sullivan, these are the only 2 comments that traffic engineering provided. So by not telling us that they want a traffic study or a TIA, it is assumed that they do not need it, and they did not see that it's needed. I do not know why the traffic engineering did not include that as part of their comments, but they didn't, so I assume that if it was needed, they would have included it, because they've done that in the past on other cases.
Thank you.
Does that include all, because traffic comments are on page 42, and reading through that, they do cover the illumination and the portable restrooms, but they also discuss clarify parking demand methodology for street parking, and then they discuss a 12-foot wide path run. But this doesn't seem like it actually is something about Ship Creek Trail. Page 42 has some comments that doesn't seem that are exactly go with this case, does it?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's, I believe in each of our packets, they've got comments on each of the cases.
I see.
So I had to look at that 2 or 3 times too. So you just have to look at the 2013.
I got it.
49.
Never mind. I
As a-
figured it out.
As a further explanation, Mr. Chair, traffic provides comments for all cases in one memo.
I see
so
that.
we circled the case for which these comments are pertinent.
Thank you. I don't think we have any further questions of staff. Would the petitioner come forward?
Chair, members of the Commission, again, my name is Dwayne Adams with USKH, representing the petitioner, the Anchor School District, again in this case. Again, staff has done a very good job, I think, of presenting the case and explaining the components. I think there is a sense, perhaps, in what Ms. O'Brien described, that from the inception, this has really tried to look at the relationship of these facilities to the community. You see that there are 2 fields, but the field that will be used for spectator use is the eastern field. It's the one furthest away from the community. As Ms. O'Brien said, also the home stands face to the east, so the sound is projected away from the neighborhood where most of the sound will emanate. So there has been certainly from the inception of the project an interest in protecting the neighborhood. Beyond that, we've had a public meeting. We've been to the Community Council 3 times, once to announce the project, once to make a presentation, once also to support any discussion that ensued in an action that was taken by the Community Council. We also worked with a committee, as Ms. O'Brien again said, on the 22nd. So further, also the principals have been very involved in getting the community to the community. With respect to that, I would like Principal Rick Stone of West and Principal Sven Gustafson of Romig just to step up and say a few words with respect to what it means to them.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing us to speak to you tonight. I also want to say thank you to the West community and our West alumni and PTSA. Through this process, we've gained a lot of their support, and they've seen the value of this project for our kids in our community. I learned a lot through this project. It first started with me and my 2 young daughters doing door hangers all through West community, letting them know of the different meetings of the Turnagain Community Council and also meetings at West High School that we have with our public. I learned that I wasn't selling anything or running for office. As people were shoveling their driveways and I was walking up to their front porch, they were asking me what I was doing, and I explained to them about the public process and wanting their input. What I learned in the West community, being a Diamond grad, was that everybody graduated from West. There's generational families in our West community that really love and support our school. They wanted to be involved, and they really value buying a home in that community, being close to the school. The school was there, the community built around it. I also then learned a lot by going to 3 different community councils, 2 different meetings at West, and also being on the news last night, letting folks know about tonight's meeting for public comment. I also want to share with you a little bit about turf fields in Anchorage School District. Even though West has improved our graduation rate 23% in 7 years, I have to brag a little bit. West and East and Bartlett, I'm so proud of saying that we are going to get some turf fields because this summer, and we are the last 3 schools to receive turf fields. Even though we are the schools with the lowest graduation rates, the highest dropout rates, and the highest minority and lowest socioeconomic status in the town. So I'm proud of the fact that these 3 schools, West, East, and Bartlett, are finally getting some turf fields and getting the pride in our school, pride back in our communities. I also want to just let you know, when our kids go to different fields and communities, for one of our kids, I even was interviewed last night. He said, Mr. Stone, I'm so glad that we don't go and play in the ghetto anymore. We have fields out there back there now. 4 years ago, our kids were standing on a Connex to a side that was our goalpost. That's how our kicker was kicking extra points. Now we're at a point where our kids can be proud of our school, or we can bring our community back into our neighborhood, and our neighborhoods can come to our school and feel prideful of sending their kids to West High School with a brand new sports complex out back. The kids are so excited right now in the hallways. They were interviewed last night. It all talks about what Mr. Gaston said about service, about achievements, about graduations, about attendance. They're proud of wearing the orange and black now. They're proud of being from the original high school in town. And it all becomes of what we're doing with our academics and then our athletics. So I don't want to reiterate what Mr. Gaston said, but it's true what kids feel about sports in school. So thank you, and I'll be here for any questions.
Good evening, I'm Sven Gustafson, I'm the principal at Romig, and I kind of wanted to touch upon that we do have 2 schools on this campus, and that means we have probably the largest student body in a campus facility with their 1,800 and Romig's 800. And these facilities will be used by 2 schools. Romig and West are trying to become a real 7-12 program. You may have seen us on the news and in the newspaper a bunch of times this year as we're developing programs that go from 7th through 12th grade. And with that, we have a facility and a footprint on our facility. It's a little smaller that we get to do a lot of sharing. And in that time, we also have PE outside. In addition to the sports, we also have, the actual classes out there. This facility with all the amenities will help out tremendously. The extra time we're going to be able to be on them, so there isn't any mud. The track is going to be amazing because it's going to be a dark track and we'll be able to get out there a lot earlier. And I just wanted to be able to say that the Romig piece in this, granted we don't have varsity football, but we will be definitely there supporting West High because we are a 7-12 program. Thank you.
What I might do is get quickly to the proposed modifications and additions to the motion. As we said, we did work, we've had several meetings, and we did work specifically with a committee. It was a subcommittee. We worked on things that did not pass for approval at the community council. A different motion passed, but we do recognize that projects such as this do have an effect on the community. We wanted to work with that community, and that's what generated these. Now, they don't respond one-to-one with what was requested. In some cases, there's a difference of opinion. Not much, though. Actually, we're very, very close and aligned. And I think when you listen to testimony that I assume will follow, you're going to find it hard to find a person who's opposed to this. There may not be any. But what they do want to do is ensure that the relationship within the community continues. What you see is a number of lists provide disabled parking. We certainly intend to do that on an event basis. We'll look at a joint parking agreement, not only with Dempsey Anderson, but also with the post office, but we don't have control over those arrangements, so we will investigate the opportunity to do that. We'll address noise mitigation. We had someone who did noise readings this last weekend. He's 2 weeks away from actually composing a report that will provide 3 things. First of all, baseline measurements. Second of all, projections of what effects there will be. And then third of all, recommended mitigation that might protect those areas where there are actually concerns. So to a great degree on the noise that have been recommended by the Community Council Committee, we really want to see what the results of that noise analysis are before we clearly buy on to what an appropriate mitigation is. 13, low fencing to deter pedestrians. We want to protect the facilities, and that's what that what we call number 13 would be. 14, access to be maintained for the fields and tracks for public use when it's not used by the school or rental. We certainly are on board with that. Close communication and close relationship with the community protects the facilities. We want eyes on these fields. 15, signs should be posted stating that dogs are not allowed on artificial fields. There is a proposal that we have some sort of a poop station or doggy station. That's a tough relationship with a user group or someone who's going to promise to do that. If it doesn't happen, then who's on the hook for that? So there are some management issues that at this point we really can't quite agree to We want to protect the facility also, but we are interested in working with the community to see what we can do. But the question is this really an appropriate item as a condition of approval on a site plan? We don't think it is. That doesn't mean we aren't committed to trying to resolve that. And 16, there's things that will remain, and even after noise studies are done, there are still going to be some concern in the community whether we've addressed it and how we've addressed that. And to that extent, we are proposing that we would meet after this information is available, after we figured out a strategy with the community for a path forward. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions whatever time I have. I'd certainly enjoy those 15 seconds for rebuttal. Thank you.
37. You're pretty good at this, Dwayne.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pratt.
With one quick question, I think on the noise, I understood the community concern and how you're addressing that. On the speakers that you're installing, will these just be installed underneath the bleachers, or are these like little Bose boxes, or they're just not mounted on poles, I guess, so that you get blasted? Can you just give me the 10, 15 second on what that means?
Through the chair, Commissioner Pratt, it hasn't been designed because we want the noise guy. This guy does stages, he does performing arts centers, so he's a sound guy. He's not just a noise guy, he's a sound guy. But in my initial discussions with him, they're much smaller speakers and they're much more focused. So they're basically within the crowd and they're projected into the crowd. And that does a number of things. It lowers the volume, but also then the bodies absorb the sound, which is one of the key components because each of us is a great muffler for noise. So those are the two things. The other things he's looking at to be more, he is also looking at the bleachers and how to capture that noise when people are pounding their feet and yelling. How do you capture that noise? The Community Council also has a concern about rebound because, again, we're on the eastern field. We're facing to the east. We're projecting. So one of the tasks I asked him to address was what is the characteristic of rebound noise off of that? We are, a couple hundred, 250 feet away from that wall, but there will be some rebound, and it's got to cover another 500 feet or so. But that sound, is it the same, and how do we deal with that? So he's got a number of tasks. Speakers are one of them, but he also has other tasks.
So these technologies, they haven't been deployed yet in the ASD, but it might be transferable?
Commissioner Pratt, yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sullivan.
To follow up with the speakers, are the speakers going to be used just by the school, or are they going to be used also by people that is renting the space?
They will rent these facilities, and that's pretty typical. There's a number of soccer leagues, and soccer has to rent these facilities. Now, there are a couple things that I should clarify in the package that may be a little confusing. First of all, one thing we said is it's been there since the 60s. This predates the neighborhood even. It's back in the 50s. So we're in the early 50s when this school was built. So it's an older school, and the alumni have made it very clear to me that they did attend this school at that time. They did exist and are educated. The other thing, and much more serious, is the issue of what kind of use this obtains, and it follows very well with what Commissioner Sullivan asked. There are a number of events that take place. There's track and field that will take place on this. There are soccer events that will take place. There are varsity football. There are a number of events that will take place. But those of concern to the neighborhood, those that will affect the neighborhood, primarily are those of varsity football. That's when the fans gather, and that's when the noise is generated. There's about 4 or 5 of those events a year. They play 8 to 10 games a year. Half of those would be home games. So those are the ones we're talking about, is 4 or 5. But that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be a lot more events. I mean, the more events, the better as far as public use facilities go. But the ones that we're really focusing on, the ones that we're concerned about, are 4 to 5 events a year. Now, one thing that we're looking at, and one thing you'll see in the recommendations of the Turnagain Community Council, is that of rentals and not allowing rentals to use public address systems. But as many of you know, this is used for the Mayor's Marathon. This is used for a number of running events. This is used for 10-kilometer running events. This is used for all sorts of events, many of which we haven't even envisioned yet. And West High is a little different from most schools because it is the closest school to the center of our community. And as a result, it has those connections into the trail system. It provides access into the coastal trail, into the Laney Fleischer Chester Creek Trail. So it has a different prominence with respect to its role within the community. And so when we first were discussing this, we said, well, that seems like a pretty reasonable request. But in reviewing that, we have to be careful that we don't negate the ability to use this public address system for those events as well. It has the same noise considerations. It's just at this time we don't want to preclude that use if we can find a way to allow that use and still protect the interests of the public. The public does receive those effects now because there are those events that take place, but assuming that use grows, they have a legitimate concern. We want to address those, but we don't want to preclude this at this time. We're going to come back and we'll have the opportunity to address some of these in a little more detail. That's why we're also going to meet with the community council if you approve the conditions that we're bringing forward. But there's a number of things that we simply don't want to provide an answer to something where we haven't really assessed what the question is. Long answer to Ms.
And when the school is not using, and you have here in your new conditions that the public can access the facility, I think that's awesome because it's like all about the community. That there's any hours, after hours, that it will be closed?
I might defer to the Anchorage School District representatives whether school district parks are closed after 11, for example, most parks.
Thank you. My name is Mike Abbott. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the school district. Commissioner Sullivan, through the chair, all of our facilities are closed at 11 p.m. And I think 6 a.m. is when they open. So that's a blanket closure on all of our outdoor facilities.
And going back to that, it's a simple question. One of the policies to provide connectivity with the neighborhoods. I mean, this school is right there in the neighborhood. I went walking last night around to understand more the project, and I walked through the pedestrian walkways. It was south and north next to the houses. And it seems to me that they are not very good. They seem a little dangerous, and also in the southwest side, there's a pond of water. So if people are coming to the school from that pedestrian, it's very hard to walk through there. It's lonely, and it seems that it could be a potential area for hurting someone. And then once you get into the school, it's really hard to walk through the water to get back into the stadium. Also, the other side I think the other side it's easy and has a better condition. Having open, I think these don't have gates or anything that prevent people to walk in after hours. I'm assuming that you will have cameras. But if there's any thoughts on these two pathways to improve the walking surface or once you get into the school to make it a nicer walk for the kids?
Commissioner Sullivan, the project does include regrading. We'll be staging things and ripping that whole area up as we're doing construction. We do intend to regrade that area so that it, among other things, can be used by the students, in particular the middle school students will use that area a lot. There's also going to be a path. We want a path. Community was was one of the things that at the committee council meeting, the committee asked for, so we have indicated a path there. It will be regraded, but that only addresses our property. We don't have the ability to use dedicated school district funds, of course, to repair off-premises trails, so we can't deal with that, but we will address that portion that is on school property.
Yeah, I understand, and I think it's great, this project. I mean, the school really needs this to happen, and it was just one of my observations that I was shocked when I was walking there. I felt a little, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions of the petitioner? All right. Thanks. At this time, we would like to open the public hearing. I think everybody was here when I listed the time limits, but I'll review them really quickly. Individuals have 3 minutes. Community councils, PTAs have 5 minutes, and petitioner knows his rebuttal time. At this time, anyone wish to speak to this case, please step forward. Please come forward. Kind of form a line. And when you get to the front, please state and spell your name for the record.
My name is Barbara Bowerman, and I live on Forest Park Drive, and I have lived there since 1963. I have seen a lot of changes. The road was dead end when I bought my house. The only problem we had with traffic was when the boys got a little ambitious and went around and around and around. Now they go right out to Northern Lights Boulevard. And that's what we're asking for. We're asking to have some other way of getting out to Northern Lights Boulevard. And we were not notified. Now, I know that Mr. Stone and several others notified the houses that are along the fence between Huntington Park and the school. But those of us that live on Forest Park Drive were never notified of anything being done. Yes, I know there are public announcements and things like that. But someone from the district, the traffic engineers, or the USKH, I believe, should have come down to us and said something about how is it going to affect you. I don't think that they have really done a good job of checking with the traffic. My neighbor across the street one year lost her mailbox 8 times in one winter. My neighbor across the street now lost her mailbox, and her next door neighbor lost their mailbox here less than a month away. So we do have a traffic problem, and we would like to see if there isn't something that can be done. And I would ask that this traffic survey be done before you okay this plan.
Commissioner Pratt.
Just 2 quick questions. Thank you. How did you find out that this was going on?
Well, I put myself on the mailing list of the Turnagain Community Council.
Okay.
And I read that. And I read that, and they talked about having a meeting. And so that's how I did that. And I noticed who was supplying the information. And so I went to USKH, talked to Mr. Adams.
Good. Thank you. I'm not that familiar with the area.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry, I'm not that familiar with the area. I think where is Forest Park? Which side of the school? I'm trying to locate it on my map here.
Okay. You go down Hillcrest, and you'll dead end at Forest Park Drive. And then you turn south and go out to Northern Lights Boulevard.
Got it.
The subdivision was never designed to be a through street.
That's the only place in Anchorage where that happened.
No, it isn't, of course.
Thank you.
So.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Well, my name is Tim Davis. I'm the head football coach at West High School. I just want to really speak to the facilities and the important role they have in the community. First of all, I come here as a advocate for community. The football team that I came to 4 years ago was one where we had a number of young men, that were not doing that great academically. We've really put our energy into focusing on academics, and we've seen great results. First, for example, we have seen 0 players on the varsity squad last year needed to attend summer school to play varsity football. So the tangible qualities of sports and athletics, which have been spoken to earlier tonight, I think play out here very clearly. And why I advocate for community is because this is a place where I want the community to come and support these young men that are going to be leaders. So not only is this an opportunity for community now, this will be an opportunity for community in the future. One of the key issues is the community coming and observing the games, the 4 to 5 games. As a football coach, I've been in this city here for about 13 years coaching football. 2001 was my first year coaching. And in that time, I've observed attendance at football games is anywhere from between 1,800 to 3,000 people. The people are going to come to football games, and I want to make sure, I would love to see that everybody that comes from that community and walks over to support those young men that are going to be leaders has a place to sit and a place to observe the game. I think a 2,500 person seating venue is perfectly acceptable and a great opportunity for all of Anchorage's West Side community to come in and root on those guys. So I thank you for your time, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you. Please state and spell your name.
My name is Adrian Reed, R-E-E-D, and I live at 2536 Forest Park Drive. I, too, live on Forest Park Drive. And I have to get my kids out early in the morning with the traffic. And I measure anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes. The children and the adults are very courteous, coming back and forth on Forest Park Drive in the morning between 6:30, 7 o'clock. When there's games, after the games, it might take me an additional 3 to 5 minutes wait time. But they're still courteous, and they do stop and allow us to go in and out our driveways. I actually live right there on Forest Park, and my driveway is right there. And I've only lost my trash can once. That's number one. Number two, and I'll try to be brief, I have 2 sons that play football, varsity and junior varsity at West, and I've noticed improvement in their academics and in their participation in the community. The community that surrounds them supports them. One gentleman said to my son as they were doing fundraising, I want to believe in you and I want to support you, but what can you do for this community? What are you going to do for the neighborhood? The next year, my son was out there shoveling snow because he wanted to have a commitment to the community and to the school. So as a parent, as a single parent, as a mother, having to come out there and sit in the snow and in the mud in my little fold-up chair, I really appreciate this stadium. And I think the other parents and the other neighbors will appreciate it too. And it's going to have a positive effect on our young men and our community. Thank you.
Are there any questions? I have a question. Do you back into your driveway on game day?
Yes, I do. That's the best way to park.
Commissioner Emerton has a question. Thank you.
This is me being ignorant. So there are currently games at West.
Yes.
And so this is just going to expand the amount of people who can come, essentially?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll be able to more support the community and support the games if they have places to sit instead of in our little fold-up chairs.
Okay.
I think more people will come out
Okay.
and support the young men and women that play football.
Thank you. Step right up. Don't be shy.
Hello, my name is Roberta Craig, C-R-A-I-G. I am a parent of a former alum of West High. He graduated in 2010. When we moved to Anchorage in 10 years prior to him attending West High, he played soccer with Boys and Girls Club on the West High Romeg fields. He went from there to playing Boys and Girls Club football, where they would practice on the West Romeg fields. So before he even was introduced to West High, West High academics, he was introduced to the West High Romeg campus. And that's a wonderful thing that the campus is open for those community events. Various other events that take place at that campus in the past have been the Mayor's Run, the Torchlight Run. Various running clubs utilize that facility during the day or right after school, so they come and have their running programs there. The campus itself is used not only by the athletes who participate in after-school activities, but also by the students who participate in PE classes. That campus is utilized almost on a 24/7 basis, as it is right now, with the various community activities, the school activities, and just individuals that want to go up and exercise throughout the day. Having the expansion of this stadium would allow more people to enjoy the facility. It'll allow to have more public events there for community events that take place. And it will give some pride back to the students who will be able to see the football players, the flag football player girls, the soccer players, the track members, to have their fellow students come and cheer them on at activities after school. And that continues to build that school spirit that feeds out and in the future brings those graduating students back to the community to give back. And I hope that the community approves this project to further that community spirit. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jim Kubitz, K-U-B-I-T-Z. Just a couple words. I'm a West High alum from about 1 million years ago. All three of my kids have graduated from West, and my last one will be graduating next year. I've spent a lot of time at West in my career, and I've been working on the master plan that we've worked on for years. I helped to raise $1.8 million so we could renovate the auditorium at West. If you remember, it was done several years ago. I know every square inch of that school. The only problem with West Romick is that the campus size. There's 44 acres for 2 schools, 2,800 kids, and plus faculty use that school during the day. The West High Gymnasium, as you may know, holds 4,000 kids, largest gymnasium outside of, I don't know what UA holds. And of course, the auditorium holds 2,000. Oftentimes, both are being used at the same time because it's such a community center for everything. We have to have the state basketball championship there. We have to have this debate championship there. We have the Bandorama at auditorium. The problem with the school size, it's small, but I'm just thoroughly thankful that USKH put together this plan, because the master plan I worked on for the school had a bunch of stuff crammed in there. It wasn't going to work, but they used that, about every square inch of that site, to be able to get 2 fields on there, 1 stadium field, a practice field, and keep the tennis courts and maybe have some expansion, and a 10-lane track. This will be the first 10-lane track, only 10-lane track in Anchorage. So it's going to be a great amenity to people who do track too. So I'm really thrilled at the job they did on it. And we can't solve the Forest Park Drive problem. That's been going on since I went to that school in the 60s. You know, the person who developed Forest Park should have solved that problem. But West High is used, as you know, and people know about the traffic, and they deal with it. But I just hope you guys look at this site plan and realize that a professional group did a heck of a good job putting this together. And we all support it. Turner Community Council passed both motions unanimously, to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. We have a couple questions. Mr. Pratt.
One quick question. You mentioned the variety of activities that happen at West. I'm from South Anchorage, but yeah, we've been over there. My girls going over for the basketball, doing a whole host of things. Are you concerned at all with the with overlapping events? If you have 2,500 people at the football stadium, and then you've got something going on in the auditorium, and you might have something going on in the gymnasium. And just having all that traffic and activity concentrated on, as you mentioned, on that facility, it's
Certainly. I am a little bit. If that's a management issue, though. You know, you just may not be able to book 3 major events at the same time at the same school. The auditorium and the gymnasium can be handled by the one parking lot that West High has. Occasionally they park up the road a little ways. The good news about this is, though, the access will use the access the Romick parking lot, which currently people go to a West event, they don't park all the way over at Romick, really, and walk all the way to West. But the Romick parking lot will have a pathway, if you see on the site plan, you know, directly to the stadium. So there will be more parking, but, you know, if that ever happens and there's a problem, then that's the school district needs to deal with that as far as management of having 3 major events at one time.
Thank you. Is it conceivable that people could park at Dempsey and walk? Is that reasonable on
Yes.
a big event? I mean, is that very hard to get from Dempsey to West?
Right. Actually, I forgot to mention that. Not only will the Romick parking lot be available, but there's talk of doing this joint parking agreement with Dempsey, which is a city facility as opposed to ASD, and that could relieve it also. So I don't think there's going to be a problem if they fill the stadium and they fill the auditorium and they fill the gym at the same time, but there very well could be.
Right. Any further?
What a nice problem to have, you know, if you think about it in our community, if that many people are out taking advantage of events.
Well, thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joshua Reed.
And I'm Marquise Rayford.
I'm a junior attending West High School. I'm a student athlete there, and I've been a part of the football program for about 3 years now. And we've done very multiple community activities where I've gone and fundraised in the local community behind West High School, Forest Park, and all those neighborhoods in there. And every time I go fundraising, I get asked, "Oh, when you guys gonna have a game at West?" and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of people who come to support us would like to be in walking distance of facilities like that, which is why I'm glad and I'm proud to be part of West High School, and thank you for your time.
And I've also been asked why parents can't come to most of our games, why we don't have that many people coming to games, because they can't get there in time for it to start and to see us play, because it's not in distance of walking or driving distance, because it's usually in pretty much the middle of nowhere for where they live if they don't live in walking distance of the school.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions? Thanks for coming.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Kathy Gleason, Kathy with a C, Gleason, and I'm currently President of Turnagain Community Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight on these improvements to the West Romick campus. I would like to thank the school district and USKH and the Western Romick principals for expanding the public process at TCC's request to ensure Turnagain residents have had a better opportunity to be engaged in the proposed facility improvements. And I did submit the letter. I apologize for the late submittal. There was a little bit of miscommunication on who was going to kind of cover the things that we talked about on April 26th, but hopefully you all have a copy of that. While there seems to be a lot of support for the projects and upgrades, and they are definitely necessary for the safety of the student athletes, there's no question about that. And I really appreciate being educated on that, not having anyone in the school district at West or Romick. But as president, once this project became known, around the Huntington Park neighborhood, which is the residential area directly west of the campus, I did hear from neighbors who are concerned about the stadium being added to the campus, and in particular the noise, the traffic, the parking, both from football and other school-related activities as well as the rental use. As you've heard, it's easy to say there's only a few football games a year, but then you've also heard actually this could be heavily used because it will become such a popular venue for other student activities as well as rentals because of its location. So I think they are well founded, and so. And there is an issue now. The West Romig Master Plan that was completed in 2010 did document that there are parking and traffic issues when there are high attendance activities at the school. So their concerns are well founded. But and they also were concerned about a 2,500 bleacher capacity stadium added to it. So the Turnagain Community Council put together a committee, and we felt like we did due diligence on trying to address some of those because nobody really that contacted me said they outright oppose the project, but they do want the issues addressed appropriately in this process. And so at the April 4th Turnagain Community Council meeting, we did pass 2 motions of support for the proposed facilities. And those full motions, the wording is attached at the very end of the letter. The first one states that any sports-related facility-related recommendations approved and forwarded to the UDC do not hinder timely project approval and installation of the turf fields and track upgrades, because we recognize how important it is to get those installed. The committee recommendations, it's not that they didn't pass. They actually were never put up for a vote at our April 4th meeting, so they were neither approved or opposed. But because neighborhood residents had concerns, the second of the 2 motions that we passed in support of the project was contingent upon 3 things. One being that public input is solicited to ensure that the proposed plan to upgrade facilities for home events addresses and balances concern about size, noise, aesthetics, lighting, and cost. So in an attempt to ensure that that caveat was achieved, members of Turnagain Community Council, most of whom did serve on the committee, met with, as you've heard about, this April 22nd meeting, and we went over those, and I felt like we got some good consensus on some key items. However, it is unfortunate that the noise and traffic studies have not been completed yet. So we're at a pretty big disadvantage in terms of not seeing what the results of those are and what mitigation measures they may recommend. So I do request that UDC include a provision tonight that before any final site plan is approved, once the studies are completed, that we do have an opportunity to review and discuss study results and recommended mitigation measures with the school district and consultants to ensure that appropriate conditions are included to mitigate noise and traffic impacts. And if I may wrap up, please. Thank you. And so, and I did have a discussion with Mr. Adams, and I think that won't be a problem at all. I think they'll concur with that, and we really appreciate that. And we do look forward to participate in a collaborative effort to ensure that the support of this facility is embraced by all of the Turnagain community. I think it'll be a great addition. One final comment is that kind of gray area as to whether you actually put something in writing as a condition or it's more of a loose verbal agreement. Because school district personnel come and go, and Turnagain members come and go, and consultants come and go, I think it is prudent to put as many assurances in writing as conditions to ensure long-term understanding and documentation of mitigation measures, and this will result in a better outcome and shared expectations by both the school and the nearby residents. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Pratt.
I guess just one comment. One thing that strikes me is I'm incredibly impressed with the engagement of the community, the young athletes, the public testimony, and the community council. You've obviously put a lot of time and effort into this, and you're working with the community. So I just say congratulations in terms of making all this work.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Winchester.
I'm sure you're aware of the additional new conditions that have been added.
Yeah, I haven't actually I haven't gotten a copy, but we verbally talked about them this afternoon.
Okay, so, yeah, it would be important to sort of look at, they've talked about addressing noise. I mean, there are conditions here specifically requiring that there being addressing of noise, and you heard the testimony tonight that there are studies being done, and this is going to be back before us again. So I guess, are you recommending that we approve it based on these conditions? That seems to be what the community council was saying. Is that
In the conditions in the letter that I sent, or
conditions that were added today, which are 7 additional conditions?
Oh.
You haven't seen them yet. Okay.
No, but that's okay. Well, certainly the community council definitely wants to see appropriate conditions that do address neighborhood concerns, and that, because that is contingent upon our second motion of support, and we do want to support this.
Yeah.
But there's a chicken and egg thing there that has to be resolved.
Commissioner Tiber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Ms. Gleason, first I'd like to thank you and of course, the other members of the public for coming out and participating in the process. I think it's very important, and so I definitely appreciate that. I'm looking at the Community Council's proposed conditions and kind of lining those up with the petitioner's proposed additional conditions. They're somewhat aligned. There's a few disparities there. And I know you haven't seen those, but I wanted to maybe point out a couple of the items that the petitioner had included there and see if they seemed reasonable from the community council's perspective, speaking as the president of the community council. So as far as noise, the petitioners proposed address possible noise mitigation as part of the submittal for final approval to the Urban Design Commission, including issues such as bleacher noise, public address system, and noise reflected from the west-facing wall of Romig Middle School. So that's addressing possible noise mitigation prior to the final approval. And then a follow-up condition, Anchorage School District is to meet with the representatives of the Turnagain Community Council and review the issues that remain of concern to the neighbors of the West High School, Romig Middle Schools, such as noise, traffic, and dog use of the school grounds. Those are the kind of two conditions that they had added in there, and wanted to see what your view was on that.
Well, like I said, because we haven't seen the results of the noise study, the committee that got together back in a few months ago and met several times, and we did come up with specific recommendations that we thought were reasonable. And Mr. Adams has expressed they don't want to get that specific in terms of commitment yet until the noise study is done. So we're in that gray area until we see the results of the noise study and what the consultants or experts may recommend for noise mitigation. It's difficult we're put into kind of an uncomfortable situation because some people say there's going to be perceived noise impacts. There are concerns about noise impacts. But I believe staff, when she gave her presentation, admitted, yeah, there will be noise impacts. And so how do we appropriately mitigate them to ensure that the community and the neighborhood is well taken care of, but allow that stadium to get built? I don't think we're there yet because we haven't had an opportunity to get down into the details of a discussion about mitigation measures. So with regard to number 12, address possible noise mitigation, no, I think there will need to be some noise mitigation measures put in. I really don't think that just possible mitigations and leaving it open like that is going to be appropriate to address neighborhood concerns.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of questions. One is you requested no tree removal and review a tree buffer landscaping plan, but that didn't make it into the suggested staff and the additional 10 through 16. That's an issue that needs to be either discussed now because that's the first thing. We don't have a clearing permit or clearing plan in this packet, but trees are the thing that's going to go first when this project starts. So would you speak to that a little bit and why you put it in here?
Certainly. Back in February when they held a public meeting over at the school, and it was really the very first time that Turnagain Community Council saw any kind of detail. Unfortunately, we weren't included in the process at a much earlier stage, so we kind of came in late in the game. So there were a lot of questions and that came up during that public meeting, and so USKH came up with a question response and posted it online. And one of the questions I asked at the meeting was, would any trees be removed? Just because I wanted to know the answer to that. And so the response, the Q&A response said, no trees will be removed. And so, we were fine with that. It was just a question at that time then there was also, as part of the answer, that there would be a buffer of trees and planted. But then when we saw the plan and discussed more in detail, the committee saw that the only spot where a buffer of trees along the western boundary of the campus, there's not very much room between the Romig artificial turf and the boundary. And right now, residents, neighbors use that as a pathway. And so there wouldn't be room for the site plan that looks at a future paved pathway. Right now it's just, foot traffic paved and trees. And the committee's recommendation was, no, the pathway is important. It's used by their neighborhood. We'd rather have that than a planting of buffer of trees right there. So really a landscaping issue. They've assured us no trees will be removed because there really aren't any to remove. The buffer is something the committee dismissed and discounted as something that is lower priority if we had to choose between the pathway and the buffer. And so really the only place that the committee recommended some landscaping was to help diffuse that sound that will bounce back from the 1,500 bleacher home section that faces the east, because those Romig walls are solid. Sound as a physical attribute does bounce back off something that hard. And again, it's an attempt to mitigate some of the noise impacts to the neighborhood, and we think that that's appropriate. That may need to be looked at more closely in terms of feasibility, but if there's room there, that's really about the only landscaping that we think is appropriate right at this point.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Now I'd just like to say, Commissioner Sullivan, thank you.
Just really fast. Are you familiar with the traffic study that was conducted as part of the 2010 West Rooming Master Plan?
I have not seen the study. I've read that there was a study done in the 2010 master plan. But that master plan did not include a 25 bleacher seat capacity stadium. And so that master plan agreed that there are parking issues, now with other events, as Mr. Kubitz pointed out, at the auditorium, the gym, traffic and parking along neighborhood streets can be a really major issue. And so that didn't account for this new facility. And so we really do feel like another traffic study is warranted, and it is my understanding that traffic study is underway. We just haven't seen the results of that yet.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we've seen almost every single one of these fields, and this is probably one of the more thorough community council pre-reviews that we've seen, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I guess before I leave the microphone, I know the Turnagain Community Council has been told that this is our only opportunity to provide input, that when this comes before you again for final approval, it's not a public hearing. I don't know if that's by code or just by guidelines, but because there's two pretty significant impact studies not completed yet, I guess I would request that you consider, if allowable by city code, to have another public hearing so that we can address more specifics at that time and ensure that things are appropriate so this project can move forward.
You can submit that through staff.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Louise Driscoll, Driscoll. I'm the mother of 3 children, 2 who have graduated from West High School and 1 who is still attending. I attended the February meeting at West High School that was very well attended from the user groups or potential user groups of this field. Almost unanimous support was expressed, with the exception of 1 breakout group that had Ms. Gleason in attendance. I attended the Turnagain Community Council meeting, and there was unanimous support for the proposed stadium. I also served on the subcommittee, and I do believe that USKH and the Anchorage School District has been very responsive to the concerns expressed by members on that subcommittee. I do not recommend that this be delayed for another public hearing to await the results of a traffic and noise impact study. I spoke to a family whose home is on Wellington Court, and I understand their backyard is adjacent to the field. I asked the homeowner, is noise going to be a problem for you? And her response was, oh, we really like it when there are things going. We open our windows when there are things out there. We think it's great to hear the sounds of those kids. So there are neighbors who don't mind the impacts. Granted, there will be impacts on parking and traffic. I don't want to dismiss some of those concerns, but I don't think the concerns of some residents, nearby residents, should overwhelm the 2,000 students that are there on a regular basis. And I just want to conclude by saying the focus has often been on the varsity athletes. I had a varsity athlete, in fact, a soccer player, but he also was a reluctant student. And it was the daily PE classes that he attended that kept him motivated in going to school each day, because he knew that after he got out of chemistry, he was going to go over to the gym and play tennis or basketball or something else. So it's not just the kids who are starring after school, but it's those students during the school day that will be serviced by this the improvements at West. So I really would request that this plan be approved and that the conditions that have been discussed will be met. And I think it's a great project, and I just would like to see it move forward now. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Sandy Rabinowitz. That's Rabinowitch. Like a number of people here, I've long been involved with West High School and a lot of the planning efforts, particularly I think with Jim Kubitz, we've probably gone to countless meetings for countless years together. And one of the things I would tell you is that this is a small piece of a very big project. And if you stay on this commission for a long time, you'll probably see some of those pieces in the future, hopefully, where things at West will be improved. I also think that discussion that's been going on for many years, including most recently, is a good, healthy discussion. There's not unanimous agreement about everything, not a big surprise. And I think that the discussions do bring out the kinds of things that need to be weighed and balanced and the decisions made. So that's what I think this is all about. I also live near West, very close to West High, not quite on it. I also have had 2 kids come up through Romig through West. They're now older. I've also participated in the community council and also the subcommittee meeting and meetings with the principals that have been mentioned before. So very quickly, I would say that generally speaking, I agree with the conditions that Kathy Gleason suggested. I also recognize the questions that you all raised about the points that Dwayne added. I haven't seen those written down. I can't quite compare them. They sound good to me. I kind of like to see things written down to know what's really there. But it does sound like there's a lot of alignment. I would also compliment Dwayne. He's been very responsive. I've talked to him a number of times about a lot of these details, and I appreciate that. Let me see. A couple other things, just small points. The school predates the neighborhood, but the neighborhood goes back to at least 1966. So the point is the neighborhood's not brand new either.
in my mind, noise is one of the broader concerns to a broader point or amount of the neighborhood. Traffic affects a more limited part. I'm not trying to take away from the comments that have been made, but the noise goes everywhere in every direction. I can tell you the Mayor's Marathon used to rattle my windows. I replaced my windows. They don't rattle anymore. Hopefully the new technology, if it's better focused, you might have actually better sound, but less of it hitting the neighborhood. That's my hope, but I don't know. So fingers crossed on that. Commissioner Sullivan, you asked about those pathways. What I would tell you is, two things. One, both of those pathways are used for kids to go to school, though the city nor the school district have ever maintained them. Neighbors pretty much do that. I spent years using snowshoes, putting the snow down so kids could go when my kids were going there. We have just in the community council, if that means I'm out of time. Can I have another minute? Thank you. I'm almost done. The community council just a week or so ago actually added to the CIP list for the city that those be regraded and repaved. I don't know how long it'll play out till that might happen, but I think you're on the right track. And I think I'll stop there because probably everything else has been touched on by somebody. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Thank you for.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Woody Angst. Last name is spelled A-N-G-S-T. I'm a resident of the neighborhood close enough that my students, my children, can run home between periods and get back to school without being late for the next class. For Mr. Pratt. My one major comment is we have a hugely valuable resource in the school. I'm saddened to see that it's not used 24/7. I'm delighted to see that it is used as much as possible. Coming back to the proposal before us to build this facility, any condition or change that's made to the original proposal that diminishes the effectiveness and the use of the facility, I think would be a mistake. For example, we talk about principals perhaps needing to gather their entire community outside the school. If you have a stand for the home team of 1,500 people, you cannot hold the student body at West, let alone the entire community of students plus faculty. If you have a sound system that is focused only on the spectators in the stands, but excludes the athletes that are with their teams assembling for an event, then those athletes do not when they are being called for an event. I live in the community, and I'm saddened when I cannot hear the controlled, disciplined voice of somebody that's the MC for the event, calling the athletes to their stations, telling the audience, the spectators, what's going on. I don't know what the design of that speaker system would be, but unless you can have a facility that accommodates the community and has a speaker system that all can be heard, not just the spectators, then you have failed to do the job. If we cannot create a facility where the parents can come and observe their students compete, that do not have seats on the straight finish line and starting line of the track, but are on the opposite side of the field, you've diminished the effectiveness. You've undermined the whole value of this thing as far as nurturing the growth and development of the students and the athletes. So what I would suggest is, looking ahead, how can we build this for the use not only of the school community, but make it welcoming to the entire community? The light is not a big concern. The sound is not a big concern. As Ms. Driscoll said, some of us welcome it. Some of it's a sign that we do have a healthy community, that we are supporting the students, but we're also supporting the adults in the community that can make use of this facility 24/7. Thus, anything that pushes us past the tipping point that would diminish in any way the ability for us to make use of that facility, I think would be a mistake. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you.
My name is Brian Hosken, Hosken. I'm currently the activity principal at West Anchorage High School, and actually I've been an activity principal at Chugiak, South, and Diamond. And so I do have some experience with activities and programs and inviting the community in. Out at Chugiak, that is a community facility. At Diamond High School, I was part of the initial stadium planning, and I did get some phone calls from the community about noise, but what a wonderful noise it was. It was a great noise to have people cheering and being supportive of the community and the school. In response to that, and the same response I'll give to those here, is that I will invite the neighborhood into our facility to be part of that joyous sound. I have a long history with the Anchorage School District. I'm a product of the Anchorage School District. This is my 25th year as a professional educator, 19 as an administrator. My mother went to West Anchorage High School, and so I know the history of West High School and what it means to the community. West High School has been the hub since 1953. It has been a location for concerts, political events, athletic events, and I really hope that we will be able to move forward and add some further athletic events to the venue here at West Anchorage High School. In terms of parking and noise, I don't see that adding a football game out back will necessarily modify or change what hasn't gone on for the past 50 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Gloria Manni, M-A-N-N-I. I'm a resident of Huntington Park. I lived there for about 35 years. I've graduate children and grandchildren from West High, so the school is very much part of my life. I support the idea, as mentioned, but also support that mitigation, if anything, to make the neighborhood, the immediate neighborhood, because we're all different, you know, we some enjoy the noise and some enjoy it less. If the mitigation is taken ahead of the construction or during the construction, it's much better than having a community that is going to be unhappy thereafter. It's cheaper, it is more convenient. All of this is done in what I hope is a friendly, a collaborative way, and therefore I support in general the recommendation that Kathy Gleason has made. And when you go through them, you will notice that they are basically noise and traffic, and mostly noise. So I would appreciate, I didn't have the opportunity to see what are the most recent conditions, but certainly I'd like to have whatever Kathy proposed includes to the extent possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joshua Craig, C-R-A-I-G. I'm an alumni of West High School. I played football all 4 years there, wrestled all 4 years there, and was in track my sophomore and junior year. Coach Davis was my coach my junior and senior year there, and now I am playing college football at Olivet Nazarene University in Bourbonnais, Illinois. And I know that I would not be there if it wasn't for the community that was around me with football, encouraging me to be where I am today. I know that I would have loved to have played a home varsity football game at West High in a facility exactly as it is planned right there. But I never once was given that opportunity to have a home game at West High. It was always at AFS. And that's quite a difference for a football player or any varsity athlete. I would have loved to have had a community there to cheer us on at a home game at West High. And I just know that if a facility like that is built at West High, that the future varsity athletes that would be able to use that facility or anybody that would be able to use that facility would be extremely lucky and blessed by it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joe Alward, A-L-W-A-R-D. I'm a 21-year faculty member at West High School. I've coached cross-country running and track and field. I was a student athlete at Romig and West. My parents both went to West. Then it was Anchorage High School. I've been on the facilities renovation committee at West for 7 years, although this project has kind of been a spin-off the last couple of years. I've worked with two great people, Jim Kubitz and Blythe Marston. We've worked very hard to see that our community get the much-needed improvements on our combined facilities for these two schools that are now being called one. As a former student athlete, I can still recall all of the championship events that we had at other schools. I participated in track, and we never once had a championship event at our school. That's still true today. Whether it's track and field or football, whether that's varsity boys or varsity girls flag football, that's still true today. All we're really asking for is a level playing field, and that pun is intended since our track is unlevel. We would like to see the same type of facilities that other schools, both middle and high school, have. For example, Mirror Lake Middle School, a beautiful facility. Chugiak High School, a wonderful facility. That's really what we're asking for, is the same consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you.
My name is Gail Sieberts, Gail, G-A-I-L, Sieberts, S-I-E-B-E-R-T-S. I am a resident of Huntington Park and have been so for 36 years. I've enjoyed living next to the school, and I support the facilities as proposed, and I hope that you will support them as well. Ms. Sullivan, I use those easements almost every day, and my greatest fear is running into a moose. And as for the big lake in the middle of the lower playfield, that's due to poor drainage from the melting snow. Thank you.
Thank you. I assume we have no questions. Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is John Whedon, last name is W-E-D-I-N, and not much to add. I think there's just been some wonderful testimony here on behalf of this project. The one thing I would like to add, I have a son who's playing varsity football this year at West. Their JV games last year, they played at Begich Middle School, and I'd invite you to drive by Begich Middle School and look at that facility. That's a middle school, 7th and 8th grade. West High School is the oldest high school in Anchorage. It's the original high school. Go to Begich, look at the bleachers, look at the field, look at the facility. And here's our oldest, greatest tradition in terms of high schools. And we have the worst field in the Cook Inlet Conference by far. It's dangerous. I've pulled fist-sized rocks out of the practice field there. It's my son, we practice there as a Boys and Girls Club team. So anyway, I don't have too much more to add. I just hate to see this thing delayed any further, and I think people have gone the mile and many extra miles to make it work. So I'd encourage you to vote yes and vote yes now. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Thank you. Anyone else? Last chance. Hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. Hold on one second, Dwayne. Dwayne, we're going to go ahead and give you 3 minutes to summarize everything up.
Thank you. I think you've seen the realm of support and those with concerns, and I think the spectrum of difference is for a project with this type of facility within a neighborhood so close. That spectrum's very narrow. You didn't hear a single person say, I'm opposed to this. If you were to look at page 30, a lot of that is, look at page 30 of your packet and you'll see how many homes are actually most directly affected by this. It's very small, and the honest truth is you didn't see those folks here tonight. They didn't have those concerns. You did hear a couple people who are in close proximity. I don't want to belittle their interest, nor do I want to belittle the concerns of this committee of very dedicated citizens. But with respect to what those concerns are, it's a very narrow spectrum, and it's noise and traffic, and that's what it is. Let me address why we haven't gotten to that point. The traffic is, we want to have those both considered at the same time, but the noise in particular, we have to replicate the conditions that would be expected on a game day. So we can't have a bunch of snow laying on the ground because it muffles the noise. So in the interest of ensuring the accuracy of what's provided, we needed to provide game day conditions, and so that snow had to be gone. This weekend was the first time that we could replicate hard frozen ground conditions. It was ice, but the same, it wasn't snow, so we replicated those conditions. And so that's why that study's delayed. That's why we're here before you. We had intended to have both the traffic and noise study complete at this time. So those will be available, and they will feed in to your next approval. Now, your next approval is primarily a technical aspect. Did we comply with the conditions of approval with respect to that noise and with respect to those traffic? A field is a field, a stadium's a stadium. You're not going to see a tremendous amount of difference in what the realm of possibilities are. So the question is, what can we do to mitigate those concerns? And those are fundamentally relatively of small spectrum. So how do we address those? Well, I think the community council's committee, they're on board. They haven't suggested any drastic reductions, but what they are looking for is in that narrow spectrum of conditions that they provided you some recommendations that we're going to consider as those noise studies come out. And we will consider those. We'll consider both from a traffic standpoint. We'll look at the noise study as we get that, which should be available in another 2 weeks, as well as the noise study, which will also be available. We will make those available to the committee council. What I suggest is recognizing the concerns that maybe a public hearing is appropriate. I'd question that. Are you really going to get value out of a public hearing? What I think you would get value out of is input from this community group, either in written or verbal form, and you're certain. What I would suggest is that on that condition, that last condition, that you ask that words be added simply that that committee of the Turnagain Community Council provide a report with respect to the process and the findings and the recommendations that the school district moves forward. Thus, they have an opportunity to provide that input, and the input and the concern that you saw echoed was from that small group of people. Keep that live. Let them make their comments known. I don't think you want a bunch of concerned parents and students and open this up to a yet another public hearing. But I think those concerns will be addressed by allowing that to happen. Ask for a report, either verbally or written, whichever serves the purposes of the commission best, and that we address those things that they brought up. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I have a couple technical questions, Dwayne, that I was going to wait on asking. All the natural turf in between the fields and in the discus, but mostly between the fields and between the parking lots and there'll be a lot of foot traffic, particularly between the two synthetic fields, behind the grandstands and the concessions. You know, how do you anticipate that that particular, you basically, I envision you have a stadium entry walk, and then I think people are going to deviate from that walk, and if they got to go over to play practice on the smaller field, they'll walk straight or right across through the grass, and that could almost be a worn footpath in grass that it'll just die. I mean, I think you're going to have dirt trails through this thing, and then you may have some other areas in the how do you intend to maintain, in our short growing season, what is your thoughts on how to make sure that grass doesn't become a big muddy situation?
Chair Dinwiddie, I think actually there won't be that much between the two fields because they serve different purposes. The large field serves a high school purpose. The track serves both schools. The field to the west fields serves the purposes of roaming. So most of that traffic actually is going to go around that field to the field. The one discussion has been whether that field should be located to the east or to the south or to the north. That's being the big discussion from the standpoint of Romig School, but we don't anticipate that much traffic between the two fields because they're really serving different purposes. Will there be traffic? Yes, but we don't feel that it's going to be so much as to generate that level of social trail that you're concerned about. Part of that also, there is a grade drop there that it drops about 3 to 4 feet, and that hasn't. So that's part of it. It really, in our minds, isn't that relationship that you would expect to exist.
There's a grade drop between the two fields?
Yes.
Well, I guess the foot traffic, I think one of the things, Clark, you have a ton of, every single day the kids at Clark are on that field for various, it might not even be anything related from school. They hang out after school. They go to the natural turf field in the corner. There's various trails that you see at Clark that are worn over just foot traffic, and the natural turf, there's areas of that turf that is particularly around the field, between the field and the back parking lot where the buses are, and then over on some of that grass is just always struggled. It's got little dirt trails, so
right.
That was just my concern. And if there's any thought to irrigating the natural grass, or basically somehow give the natural grass a little bit more of a fighting chance to, if it does see, or the other thing is the ability to keep foot traffic off the natural grass long enough for it to sustain the kind of foot traffic that those synthetic fields are going to get.
Yeah, sure, Dinwiddie, I do understand that issue in particular. Short growing season, and during the period that kids do walk on it, it's wetter, it's frozen, things get ground into the nubs. What you may want to do then is provide a condition of approval that says address whether traffic is an issue between the fields and how growth of grass is going to be assured or encouraged, or some words such as that. And we'll look at that issue. We'll talk, among other things, it's a programmatic issue, so I think part of it is also talking to the two principals and the coaches involved and seeing, number one, quantify the problem, number two, determine how to address it. And I think, we can certainly do that.
And just for clarification, you touched on it a little bit, but you have this project is a go. It's got a contractor. It's dirt ready, and our next hearing on this is basically a formality. The chances are this will be mostly constructed by the time we see it again. Is that your?
Well, there's two components to this. There's the fields, and the fields are under design and will be under contract, and those will be, by the time you see this, they'll be underway. But that's turf for turf. It's natural turf, artificial turf. So, and it's at our risk. If conditions come in, we'll deal with those. But the stadium part of this, we have to get the field in first. That's the guarantee. We're going to try to get the stadium going, the seating going this year, but it's going to be the latter part of the year. So that part won't be under construction until after you've seen this. Let me verify this. Okay, I'm getting nods of the head from the school district. That's the plan. But the key is to get the turf in quickly, and it's the sort of thing we're going to hit the ground running as soon as kids are out of the school, and we're going to bust our tails to get everything in place. But it's It's a race just to get that done before school starts. And if we can do that without disrupting the football season, we'll do that. But the stands are not going to be complete by the time you see this again, I don't think. It will be very difficult to, given the recommendations that I've laid on the table, especially coordination, completion of sound study, noise studies. We aren't going to get that done this month, obviously. We may be able to get an application in next month. That'll be June, so we're talking July, August that you would see this. So, it is very possible that you would see this before any construction would take place on the vertical component.
Commissioner Winchester.
Just to clarify, Dwayne, for a second, you're saying, you mentioned that you're willing to provide a written report that you are addressing these issues with the community council and what those particular resolution of those issues were back to this commission. Is that correct?
To the chair, Commissioner Winchester, we will do that regardless as part of our application. We're going to do that. That goes without saying. But I don't want to suggest that we represent the interests of the council. And what I would suggest is that in recognition of Ms. Gleason's interest in having an opportunity to again provide input, and I do understand her concern because again, it's usually the final review is typically one of a technical nature, but she wants to make sure that they have an opportunity for input, that they be provided also to provide their own report so that you can ensure that you're seeing what is a valid and proper and appropriate response to your conditions in the noise study and traffic studies.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Thank you.
Oh, hold on, Monica.
Sorry. Just what it's been done. I mean, we've been talking a lot about the noise, but regarding the traffic concerns, you mentioned there's a traffic study coming?
Through the chair, Commissioner Sullivan, yes, we're looking at traffic. I mean, we need to do that and see if traffic flow needs to be addressed. The reality is, with respect to traffic, we're going to look at that. Forest Park Drive, look at your map. You see it's only a tiny portion. We aren't going to be able to address. I mean, I'd like to provide nice flowing words that makes everybody feel good, but we aren't going to be able to address Forest Park Drive. What will be the character of this? It's about the same level that you see on a school day. And are there impacts to the neighborhood when these kids get out of school, especially on a Friday afternoon? Yes. Will we be able to address that? We may come up with something, but that traffic is going to be similar to the end of a school day, and that's the reality of the situation. Now, the issues I think that are of concern that we heard at the public meeting that we held at West High was it was traffic in the neighborhood, particularly in Forest Park, by the two representatives that spoke to it today, with the same message that you heard. But the one issue we heard expressed was on-street parking by others onto Belmont. That was the issue that we heard. The problem is we don't have authority to put signage up on public streets. And we have looked at that on other schools to provide signage that said on event days, no parking, no on-street parking. We don't have the wherewithal to do that, and the municipality has not been receptive to that suggestion in the past. So one of the other alternatives that's been suggested is then close the gates, gate it, and charge admission fee. Well, that runs counter to the issue of providing public access, because not everybody that goes through that fence, wants to go to a game or any other event that's held there. So blocking public access is also problematic, and so the result is it's the opportunity for solutions, in all honesty, is pretty narrow for this site.
for this site specifically.
Yeah, hopefully your parking agreements would encourage people parking more.
That's
and
what we
coming
think.
towards Minnesota. I guess you guys are trying to figure out different ways to encourage people to stay in the school and not get to the neighborhood. Just one more thing. Through you, I would like to ask the Anchorage School District to please take a look at that pedestrians. The connections from neighborhoods to schools are very important, and it's very sad. I mean, I was shocked. I know it's not part of the project, but this is my time to ask the school to take a pick on that pedestrians.
They certainly can advocate for that in the inclusion of the mayor's budget.
Thank you.
Commissioner Winchester.
No problem, right?
Thank you. Just really quickly on that related issue. I mean, you spoke about the use of the Romick parking lot, and people are going to park closest to the event that they're
Right.
going to. Has that really been written down and verbalized in terms of how many spaces are available at the Romick versus what is available on the other side? Because if I was going to an event at this, I'd be parking in the Romick parking lot. It's much closer. And certainly those people are not going down Forest Park Drive. So I just...
Right. To the Chair, Commissioner Winchester, our traffic study is, it had gotten to a certain point, and then we kind of stopped as I told them to hold off as we were sorting out the noise study, and we were trying to juggle schedules. One thing that also came up that we haven't included in that noise study but need to are those lots. We had not looked at that as an opportunity. And so that's got to go into the formula, and you're exactly right. They're relatively close, and they're closer than some of the lots that are actually on West High property. And so that's got to go into the formula, because the one thing we can do to reduce Belmont parking is provide a more attractive alternative. Those both post office and the Dempsey Anderson Arena provide those opportunities, and those have to be entered into the program, and it's in their interest that we provide parking for them too, I would add. Certainly Dempsey Anderson, not the post office.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Thank you.
I closed it. I did.
I'd like to propose a motion. I'd like to move for approval of case 2013-049 with the recommendations 1 through 7. Number 8 is deleted. Recommendation number 9. And with the added new conditions 10 through 16. I would like to add to condition number 16 that the Community Council Committee be allowed to produce a written report of their findings regarding the noise study and traffic study to the Commission at the time of our final approval. Also wanted to add condition number 17 that addresses the traffic between the fields and the problems associated, that they would look at that issue and determine if there's some other mitigating ways to handle that situation in terms of making sure the grass continues to grow and other circumstances.
Thank you, Commissioner Winchester. Can we get a second? Commissioner Pratt.
I intend to support this motion, Mr. Chairman. It's obvious that there's been a lot of effort, years of work by the community, by the contractors, by the community council, and frankly by the people who attend and teach work at West High. So I really appreciate that. In terms of all of the conditions, it seems to me that that there is an attempt to address just about all of the community concerns. And once the noise guy does his thing, once the traffic guy does his thing, or her, whoever it might be, however that comes out, I doubt that would change the recommendations of this committee. I know that it wouldn't change mine, so I intend to support the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Pratt. Commissioner Winchester, would you like to speak to your motion? Go ahead, Mr. Adams.
I just want to address one aspect of the motion. On number 7, staff agreed, and our recommendation was that the phrase prior to construction of the bus driveway be entered, and I just wanted to assure that that was part of the record.
That is correct, yes.
Thank you very much.
That is correct. Yeah. Speaking to the motion, having been born and raised in Anchorage and attended high school here as well, I'm incredible support of these new fields and the opportunities that they provide. West High School has been one of those schools that really has been left out, along with East and Bartlett, and I really appreciate that these facilities are being brought forward for them. I certainly understand the community concerns, and I think that they're extremely valid, and I think the staff and the folks involved have really done an incredible job to address those issues in what could be called a very short and difficult, timely way. And I'm sorry that everyone didn't get an opportunity to see the items 10 through 16 that were brought forward to us tonight, but I think they do address those specific concerns that were brought forward by the Community Council, and then giving you that opportunity to write down your responses after you see those studies and see the mitigation that they're put forward by the professionals who look at this. And I'm not trying to deter from what you folks might think is the best opportunity for sound or whatever, but the acousticians that we work with and that Dwayne is working with will really produce some great recommendations, ones that we might not even now know are possibilities for mitigating those sound and other considerations. So I think letting those professionals do the work, letting them provide those particular mitigations is really important for us to get the best solution possible. And so that's why I'm both allowing those to go forward and at the same time giving you a chance to respond in writing to those. And of course, we'll have a look at those as well. So with that said, thank you.
Commissioner Pratt.
Yeah, just one other comment kind of to follow up on that. On the noise study, once that gets down, I really am looking forward to seeing what they can come up with, because this issue is the West High community didn't invent this issue, and it's kind of with this is I don't know how many times we've heard it, but if we can actually find some kind of new technology that actually works and works in the environments that we're dealing with here, that will have benefits not only for West High, but probably across the city, if not beyond. So I really do appreciate your moving forward with that, bringing in some expertise, and see if you can provide some very high value to the community.
Commissioner Winchester.
Yes. Further, wanted to speak to the findings of fact. Specifically, the goals and policy of the comprehensive plan are brought forward, Chapter 2105, design and public facilities, improvements for long-term use. These are things that we brought forward as a community. And West High, having been built in 1963, was one of those facilities that were really important to bring this forward. Policy 45 includes local activity centers, which West High obviously is closest to our downtown as well. Policy 78, design of municipal facilities. We're frequented by the public. I can't tell you how many times I've been to West High for a public facility, a public conference. And of course, we're encouraging the public and private collaboration and acquisition and development and maintenance of recreational spaces. I think this is a really fine example of a collaboration. It really has been community and facilities and everyone working together for the best of the community. and of course a year-round use of facilities. This will be compatible with existing and planned uses. I think it matches very closely with the 2010 plan and other plans that have been brought forward for West High and Romig. And again, the demand for public facilities. I mean, our community really needs these facilities, and not just for West High, but for the whole community of West High. I think the noise and other environmental concerns, we're going to continue to address those, obviously. And the vehicle and pedestrian circulation issues are being addressed as well. In general, I think works very well for our community.
Thank you, Commissioner Winchester. Is there any other comments? I would like to make, I'm going to support the motion. I see this, when this is fully done, I envision not just football and not soccer and just multi-use sports, but, you could hold, with the 10-lane track, you could have the entire state track meet at West High, using all the facilities. It's just a good thing. And bleachers, one of my parents went to West, but I went to Wasilla, and we had bleachers in the 80s, and they were metal, and they made lots of noise, and it just was part of growing up. Palmer's had them too since the dawn of time, and that's just how you had football. And the fields were pretty much muddy, just like everybody else's, but the entire school could go to a football game, and back in those days, the whole entire city could go to a football game at Wasilla. But it's just part of the community. It's part of what we're missing in this city. It's part of what we're missing in some of these other schools, and part of the process of which school gets which first, and that has to do with construction dollars, and it's not necessarily West wasn't what they wasn't deserving. Bartlett wasn't deserving. It's just how the construction dollars and the schedules came down, and I think it's time, and I think I will support the motion. Anyone else? Is there any opposition on the motion? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you for coming out. To move right along, we have no appearance requests. Staff, do you want to have a report? No. We're good. We have no comments. Any discussion? We have a second meeting, May 22nd. You guys know? I'm not going to be here, but
May 22nd, I will not be here.
we might have a really short board, so I think Jim might be back for the 22nd meeting, though. Can we get a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn by Monica and Soga. Good night.